And of course, I opened it to the wrong window. Welcome, everyone, to the Arete podcast. One of these days, I'll get that intro timed perfectly. We are here with Justin Spurr. I pronounced that correctly?
You did, yes.
I don't know how you could mess that up, but...
Yeah, me neither.
But that being said, we are here with Justin Spurr, and in honor of Godzilla -1, which has already been released in Japan, but will hit theaters in the U.S. for the general release. I think it's already been at some film festivals and early screenings, but it will be released in the United States and Canada as well, I believe, on December 1st. So
that's what Google says.
Yeah, right? Because I thought I missed it.
So did I, yeah.
Well, AMC keeps sending me notifications because I have AMC A-List, and they're like, get tickets for Godzilla. I'm like, oh, shit, did I miss it?
Yeah, no, we have Cineplex here, and there's nothing. We have what's known as Fathom events, and I'm hoping it's gonna be a wide release, and I can get to it on like a weekend, and I won't miss it. But
it is here at least. I don't know about Canada, but it is here, and we have the option. From what I can see, at least AMC, I would assume it's the same all across the country, but you have the option. You can see it in English or Japanese with subtitles. So,
oh, really? Interesting.
Which,
a dove.
Well, we'll get into why you may want to see it in the original Japanese, although they've done better.
Yes, they have. They get better as they go along in terms of dubbing them. I did discover that because when you prepped me for this, I was like, I have to go watch these. So I tried to watch as many of them as I can from start, and I got about 11 in, and that ran out of time. But I did start from the very beginning, and I started them in Japanese, and I moved my way in the second and third one. I watched the dub, and yeah, that was a whole experience.
Well, and as you go, you'll find the dubs become truer to the source material. Mm-hmm. The first and second ones, even the third one too, they're not even the same movie.
No, first one I watched in Japanese because I don't know if you have Tubi in America.
We do.
Tubi, yeah, they're all on Tubi. It's great. It makes them into from an hour and a half long movie to like a 2-hour long movie, but they're still great. But I watched the first one in Japanese, and then I couldn't find the second one in Japanese, so I watched that in English. And me and my brother had done a YouTube video on the third one in English, so I was like, it's available royalty free on YouTube. So I was like, let's watch it in English. And I got about 20 to 30 minutes into it, and it was about the time that the characters had suggested dropping the atomic bomb on Godzilla that I was like, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, there must be some American fuckery going on in here.
I honestly don't remember because I don't think I ever saw the second or third one in Japanese, but I watched, which for those who don't know, the third one, by the way, what's up, Sosa? The third one is King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yes.
And I watched that so much as a kid. I don't know why, because I watched it as an adult. The dub in particular, the thing's hot garbage.
It's horrendous, right?
It's so bad. Garbage. My corns. Forget about your corns. Like, what the?
Yeah. That was the point. I was like, he must be just an animated character in Japanese, and they can't, because much like with animated dubbing, you have to match the lip flaps, and it's so much harder in live action. So he was just clearly a very animated character that they couldn't find dialogue that worked. Oh my goodness, it was very funny.
Yeah, well, because the story thread, because as we all know, at least in a good Godzilla movie, there's a human story, and then the monsters are almost in the background, which is why I prefer, on every one that I've seen both of, I prefer the Japanese, even with the more modern ones, obviously the ones that aren't American. The monsters are very much a background. They're treated almost like forces of nature instead of characters, which
up to a point.
Up to a point. But that's a very Japanese thing to do in terms of storytelling.
Yes. The thing about them, sorry to cut you off. The thing about them is they take them very seriously. That's the thing. Japan takes them very seriously.
Well, so much so, and we'll get into we're going to jump around a lot, but we'll try to keep it semi-structured.
Yeah.
Which we're going to fail, but So much so that Toho has I forget what they call it. I think they call it the Godzilla Bible or the law, but they have things that these are the rules. If you're going to make a Godzilla movie, you have to follow these rules. And some of it seems a little silly, but some are obvious. Like Godzilla can't be outright killed. If you're going to show him die, there has to be some way to continue the story, which is very similar to Mustafa Akkad's Bible when it comes to Michael Myers in the Halloween franchise.
For sure.
If you want a death scene, you have to give us an out to continue, which makes perfect sense because it's worth noting Godzilla is the longest running film franchise in history.
Really? It felt like it because when I looked up, it was like 38 films. I was like, that's a lot.
But here's the best part: it's both in time and in number of films.
Interesting.
So it is because I did a while back. I do a short series on my YouTube channel, which I changed the title. It used to be 5 Things You Probably Didn't Know. Now it's 5 Things You May Not Know. Yeah. But the second or third one I did was about Godzilla, and I was like, that seems like it's not true. Like it could be, like he's certainly on the list, but no, I looked it up. It is the longest running film franchise, both in chronology and in number of volumes, because like you said, 38 films.
Yeah, you certainly notice what's interesting is as having seen 10 of them, 11 of them in a row, you start to notice certain things. Number one, they're all more or less the same movie. Number two, you really notice from era to era the difference between the 50s to the 60s. I didn't get to the 80s and 90s, but definitely between the 50s and 60s, where it's like in Japanese, they're very much like nuclear war is bad, but in the 60s one, where it's like 10, 20 years out from World War II, they're like atomic bomb all of them. Just, it doesn't matter. We'll deal with the consequences, just atomic bomb all of them. And this is the Japanese version that's saying this, not an American dubism, which I thought was really interesting. How it was like 5 movies in, they were like, yeah, the point of the first one? Duh.
Well, and then it's interesting because they circle back, which, full disclosure, I have not been able to watch all of Shin Godzilla, but from what I've seen, it's fantastic. But not the whole plot, but the plot of that movie is the U.S. is basically just like, yeah, let's just nuke the city.
Yeah.
And the Japanese are scrambling, trying to be like, no, just let us figure this out.
One of the things I'm not, well, my perspective on it, having now watched 11 Godzilla films, has certainly changed because I was like, oh, it's everything dull about Godzilla. But I really did enjoy that, yeah, the Americans were manipulating the Japanese's sort of like, it was like, oh, once Godzilla shows up, now they're interested, and they're not interested prior to it, but once Godzilla shows up, now they see something that they can, and it's interesting to see Japan's perspective on that. I think that's interesting, and in earlier films, you could tell they very much had a problem with the UN because they're like, the UN secret police is very serious, and I just think to see the other side of the world's perspective is interesting.
Well, and that's why foreign films in general, but particularly movies like Godzilla that span multiple generations, you get to see the Japanese perspective as it and not obviously it doesn't speak for all of Japan, but it does very much capture the consciousness. And then to see what the U.S., which with the exception of the new MonsterVerse movies, generally failed to do with Godzilla, and I believe Toho, and I think I read this, Toho was much more involved with the legendary film series, but
you can absolutely tell.
But even by the time we get to Godzilla versus Kong, there's, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't hate the movie, but I didn't love it. I didn't love it the way I thought I was gonna love it.
Interesting.
I did really like the second one, even though to me, I could tell that on the American side, they were glossing over a ton of the lore.
Oh, for sure.
And I kind of understand why they thought that was a good idea. I don't think it was a good idea because glossing over, oh gosh, I do this every time I'm on a podcast. I completely blank on certain things, even though I know them. The island Mothra's from.
Oh, oh my gosh! I just watched this too.
Right?
It starts with a D. Something. But to be fair, the island she's from, the name changes like movie to movie.
This is true.
It's hard. It's hard to remember it. But oh yeah, no, see, I'm doing the same thing. I don't remember what
Infant Island, that's what it is.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's kind of an interesting character. When I was prepping for this, I learned that she has her own movie. Like she has her own movie.
Most of the actually, I
Yeah.
think almost all the kaiju do, which makes it
Yeah.
even more interesting because then it's like,
Yeah.
you know, America is just now starting to get a taste of these kinds of big franchises going head to head with
Absolutely,
like a
yeah.
bunch of the multiverse movies. Japan's been doing it, you know, since when did Godzilla Raids Again? That was 1955 or 6.
Something like that. Yeah.
Well,
Ghidorah, King of Monsters. That movie is effectively Avengers for that era.
basically, yeah. Yeah, way before. And then they did it again in the Monsterverse. But I really, really enjoyed that movie. I think it's the closest the Americans have ever come to capturing the spirit of Godzilla, particularly when Ken Watanabe's character, who I can't remember his name in the movie, but I'm a big fan of the actor. It's very much a nod. There's a lot of nods to the original 1954, including Dr. Serizawa. Oh, is his name Dr. Serizawa? I think it's a reference to the first movie.
It is. Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I totally didn't pick up on that. And I just watched the 2014 one last night.
Yeah. But Dr.
Totally
Serizawa,
didn't pick up on that.
I'm going to fact check myself real quick because I don't want to be an idiot and call him Dr. Serizawa the entire night when it's not.
That sounds correct. That does sound correct. Yeah, I rewatched. It's funny because the whole part of the impetus for like me rewatching Godzilla movies was when long time ago when I first watched the 2014 one, was people coming out of that movie and being like, there isn't enough Godzilla in this movie, and just being like,
have you ever watched one?
Yeah, well, the first movie, he doesn't show up till like in his full form till like an hour into it. And
it's called suspense, people.
Like, yeah, absolutely. And that first movie, I was so blown away by it, by the special effects in it. There's that one shot of him where it's the city's on fire and it's just his head coming out. Oh my God, so good.
Well, and I saw the TikTok you uploaded, and I was like, and I think this every time I watch the movie, and I know it's been digitally remastered, so it looks cleaner, but
yeah,
it was 1954.
Yeah, I'm having that feeling with a lot of these older ones, where I'm like, this is 1954, and the scale is incredible. And
yet, that looks, in terms of how realistic it looks, I would say it's on par with some of the movies we're getting released today. The Flash. Yeah. The Flash comes to mind.
Yeah, the Flash. Oh my goodness, the Flash. I made so many videos making fun of that movie. Those movies are funny because the diehard supporters of them, they get so upset when you are even like a hair critical. It's so funny.
Well, and what kills me about that, and I would be the same, because there are Godzilla movies that I will never defend. But
I can shit on some Godzilla movies.
Hardcore. And what's really funny, and which by the way, I want to remind everybody, my podcasts are not structured at all. So not sorry. This podcast is brought to you by Stevie Wicks candles. We'll touch on them a little bit later, but I wanted to definitely touch on, because I found as I watched them as an adult, every time I watch one, I get excited. I'm like, oh, I loved this when I was younger, and I'm like, that was a piece of shit. And then I watched all the ones that I hated as a kid because they were so boring, and I'm like, that was so good. Like Godzilla versus Biollante.
I haven't gotten there yet. That's my next. I'm gonna get into the 80s and 90s. I'm excited for those.
As an adult, it's not the best Godzilla movie, but it's on the list. It's top 5 for sure.
I'm excited. I'm excited for some ones in the 90s that I remember.
It's dark, man. It's really dark.
When I was a kid, I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but I remember the Mothra remake, where they eventually introduced evil Mothra. Batra, I think is what his name is.
Yeah, Batra. Yep.
That movie I remember getting bloody.
It's wild. And then the one which I think might be the worst Godzilla movie, which again, if it's not the worst, it's certainly on the list, with Godzilla versus Megalon.
Can I guess what it is?
Oh, I already said it.
Oh, it's Godzilla versus Megalon.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I love Godzilla versus Megalon.
It's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's fun, and I will defend it on this point and this point alone, they knew what they were doing and they did exactly what they set out to do. It's a fun ride. But in terms of quality filmmaking,
Jaguar.
oh god. The song,
how could you not love Jaguar?
Oh, I do. The song at the end does it for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
But and it's just so silly. But that was the time. That was the era. Godzilla was silly back then, and it was a rip roaring good time. And then the flying drop kicks and all that stuff. It's
I can't believe you didn't say it has a different name in Japanese, but in America, and I remember it as Godzilla's Revenge.
Oh, what was that in Japanese? Yeah, that was.
I just watched it too.
It's a bad one.
Something All Monsters. It comes just after Destroy All Monsters, and it has like the same name.
Let's see.
That one they reuse footage from, because I just watched Son of Godzilla. They reused so much footage from Son of Godzilla in that movie.
Oh, All Monsters Attack.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
All Monsters Attack.
1960. Oh, yeah, that's bad. That's a bad. Isn't that's the one where the kid, he doesn't really befriend Godzilla's kid.
Yes, it's all in his imagination.
Yeah.
Yes. None of it actually happens. No.
That's a rough one.
It's so funny because nowadays people are like, the MCU is in shambles or whatever. And it's like, you want to talk about a franchise being in shambles and then recovering and managing to stick it out. Godzilla is really the one, because that would be the point. I'm like, this franchise is in shambles. Like, if TikTok existed back then, we don't think Godzilla is in shambles.
If social media existed the way it does now back then, I don't think we'd have Godzilla right now. And that, fair point. You know what? We might, though, because this is another thing that I respect the Japanese film and television industry for, is they have a much better sense, and you can look throughout history, they have a much better sense of when it's time to let something end or back off of it for a bit. Mm-hmm. And you can think of a ton of stuff. Now they're rebooting a bunch of stuff, which is, it can work, and sometimes it doesn't. Like Dragon Ball Daima is coming to mind. I'm scared. I'm
so scared. I'm so scared. Well, okay, I am and I'm not, because I really like Dragon Ball. I
love. Yeah, see, I did too. It was fun.
So good. For me, it's when Akira Toriyama writes Dragon Ball, it's good. When we let, you interact with my videos a lot. But in my videos, I've said this a lot. Dragon Ball Super is a show written by people who were fans of Dragon Ball when they were kids, and they have a very different memory of it than what it actually is. I
agree with that point. I somewhat disagreed, and I say disagree, and like we can have a friendly discussion, because it's all a matter of opinion, right? Some people love Super, some people hate Super. Yeah. Some people, I'm one of those people. I find I'm always in the middle. There are elements of Super that I really love, and there are elements that I thought were quite bad. Same with GT, and I'm sure the same will be with Daima. For one thing, the animation for Daima looks phenomenal.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Spectacular. It honestly does.
And Toriyama is really good at the bait and switch. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking the kid thing might just be the first arc, and then we might get to see some incredible stuff.
I don't hate the kid thing on its face.
It could be, because GT... Everybody hates on GT, but they actually did it about as well as you could. And I think the secret was Goku didn't lose his power-ups necessarily. He might have been slightly weaker in his base form, and then they reverse it with Super Saiyan 4, which, let's be real, even if you hate GT,
everyone loves Super Saiyan.
Everybody loves Super Saiyan 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And my thing with Daima and Super, I'm a huge nerd. I'm sure you've probably picked that up. So continuity matters to me, and the continuity on those shows is so messy. Messy.
It really is. Which Team 4-Star did a hilarious bit. They've been releasing their boo bits. They do a bit with the last episode where it's like, oh, I haven't seen you in 10 years. He's like, yeah, I have. I saw you like a year ago.
Yeah, like last week. Yeah,
exactly. Was that before or after Beerus? After, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's so funny to me, because I've been saying this for years.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
But
yeah, you did bring up a good point. It would have made all the sense in the world for them to just start Super where Z left off, because it wasn't that much longer.
No, but that's where it's they've insisted that Z is gonna happen. The end of Z has to happen, and the ending of GT, or at least toy animation, as Akira Toriyama has always disavowed himself from Dragon Ball GT, other than the shit people like. But uh, toy animation has always insisted that that's the canonical ending to Dragon Ball.
Well, they're wrong.
But yeah. I'm with you where it's like just say GT is a separate universe. Take what you want from it, because I know it's always felt like they want to keep Super Saiyan 4, keep Super Saiyan 4, keep the Shadow Dragons, and bin everything else.
Well, and the weird thing is they've already done that in
yeah.
it's not considered canon, but it could easily be considered canon because multiverse theory. Listen, it's a writing crutch for sure, but it solves the problem.
Yeah.
That's how you can have Super Saiyan 4 and Super Saiyan Blue. And
Yeah.
but they did it. They already established it inadvertently with the Future Trunks arc.
Yeah.
Because Trunks is not really traveling back in time, because they established that he's not fixing his own future. He's fixing an alternate future, which he's traveling to a different Splinter. So it's nothing. Like it's easy. Like it's easily explained, which means we can have all the Dragon Ball.
Exactly. Well, and in Super was funny because they for years tried to be like, well, time travel doesn't really work the same way, that it's not cause and effect. It you know what I mean? It creates a new timeline and you only affect the future of that timeline. And then Super comes along and is like, nah, actually, time travel works exactly how you think it does. We don't know what happened there.
Except you can create another universe and timeline, and it's really, they kind of muddled it and they didn't have to.
Yeah, like it's messy. It's really messy.
I still don't quite understand the whole time ring thing. Like, when does a new time ring get created?
I think me and my brother we've talked this out so many times of like we've like make this make sense, and I think we at one point had kind of apparently in the manga it explained a bit more. I didn't read the manga, so I couldn't articulate it to you, but
the manga is superior.
From what I've heard, I've heard the manga is way better.
And you can tell Toyotaro loves. He might love it more than Toriyama.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Well, Toriyama, I think he lost his love for it, and then when he came back for Battle of Gods, I think that was kind of because he created Beerus and Whis, I think.
Yes.
And yeah, he really rediscovered his love for it. And then superhero. So I know the superhero one, that was when he was the most heavily involved. I think he straight up wrote that.
Yeah,
and that easily.
And I will say I did not have high hopes for superhero. I was mostly averse to the animation, which I'm not gonna lie, I still don't love, but changing to the 3D models made the fight scenes. I'm not gonna say it, because we've seen that they can animate like that in traditional 2D, but I get it. It's way easier. And I preferred the whole thing being in 3D, in the 3D rendering, rather than how they try to sneak it in movies like Broly and Battle of Gods, which apparently a lot of people don't notice it. I hated it. I noticed it immediately, and I thought it was the shits.
Yeah, well, people were like, "Oh, it looks like Arc Sys. It looks like Dragon Ball Fighter."
Which I hated that game. Hated it.
Really interesting. I thought it was okay. I don't play fighting games online, so I didn't really get into it. The story mode was like, man, I'm sure tired of fighting the same 3 guys over and over and over again.
That's why I love Xenoverse, man. I love Xenoverse.
Xenoverse is so good. Xenoverse, I'm sick to death of DLC for Xenoverse 2. Please make Xenoverse 3. I mean, so many videos saying that. Just make Xenoverse 3. That's what we want. We want Xenoverse 3. We don't want Xenoverse 2, the 1,000th DLC.
2.3.4. Like, come on.
Yeah. But here's a question for you. Since you're familiar with Team 4-Star, do you see the influence they've had on the franchise?
100%. Oh yeah, 100%. It's undeniable.
It's undeniable. Like one of my favorite bits. It's a Team 4-Star bit, and it's in canon Dragon Ball. Is in early on in Dragon Ball Super, where Goku goes to fight Mr. Satan, and he gets busted by Chi-Chi, and he's like, hit me right here. And he goes flying back, and he's like, whoa! And he's like, oh, I forgot my tractor, and he pulls it up and he flies away.
Okay,
it makes me laugh every time.
You know what's funny? I hate that joke. I hate it so much.
That's so funny to
I
me.
hate it. I cringed so hard. The joke in and of itself, where he fakes getting punched, but that adding in the I forgot my tractor, because it doesn't fit. If Team Four Star did it, it would
Yeah,
be
fair enough.
funny.
Yeah,
But
fair
to
enough.
me, it
Totally
just
fair.
doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't fit. But that's
That's
me. I know a lot of people love that joke. I hate it.
I, it was just so funny to me because it was like they're so anti Team Four Star Toy is, and it's just so funny how Sabbath's like he's
I
kind
was
of
gonna say,
sneaking it in.
But Sabat loves it. I remember
Sabbath loves it.
very early on. I don't remember what year it was, but I think they'd been doing it for a year or two. Like they were still making the Frieza saga, and Sabat was asked at a con panel about Team Four Star, and he was like, "I absolutely love those guys because they're doing what I've wanted to do for
Yeah,
years." And
yeah,
he's like, "But I can't because I'm
yeah.
official."
What was interesting is I I I'm a big Linda Young fan when it comes to Frieza. A huge Linda Young fan. That's my childhood. That's where I grew up. But I got really into Team Four Star and I fell in love with Little Karibo's Frieza. And his Frieza is what made me love Chris Ayres' Frieza because they're so similar. And apparently they're unaffected by each other. Like he's not one doesn't influence the other, and that blew my mind. I was like,
I will
wow.
say because I loved Linda Young as well. Linda Young's as Genkai. Nobody else could have played Genkai in Yu Yu Hakusho. I firmly believe that. But well, wait, no, was that Linda Young? Are we
I'm not
talking? Are we
Linda,
talking
sorry.
Ocean dub or Funimation dub?
Linda Young would be Funimation.
Yeah. That's Linda Young. Yeah,
Okay.
because Funimation did Yu Yu Hakusho dub as well.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, loved it. And then I heard they were recasting Frieza for Kai, and I was like, oh, why didn't you just get Linda Young? And then I heard Chris Ayres. I was like, all right, okay, I get
Yeah,
it.
he's closer to the Japanese version. I'm not Dragon Ball is the one thing it's got to be an English dub for me. I
I,
can't. All the respect to the cast.
Super wasn't bad, but yeah, I can't watch the Japanese Z. I just can't, which is probably because, in all fairness, it's probably because I grew up with the Funimation English dub. But yeah,
Yeah.
I can't. Japanese was okay.
Yeah.
For
It's
Super.
yeah. Well, I did watch a bunch of Super in Japanese, but I really enjoyed Super more. I enjoyed the dub more, but that's because I'm more attached to it. And I had a chance to meet Chris Sabat at a convention, so I just love him generally.
I hated his early Vegeta.
Yes, but to be fair to him, that's because he's voice matching for a lot of that early.
This
Because
is true.
a big thing with for people who don't know, a big thing with Dragon Ball Z is a lot of people think they grew up with the Funimation dub, when in fact they grew up with like one of the Blue Ocean dubs or whatever.
Yep.
And like Kirby Morrow and Ryan Drummond, I believe.
Brian
Yeah,
Drummond was Vegeta. Yep, and then
yeah.
the ungodly talented Scott McNeil was several voices,
Yes,
including
he's
Piccolo. And
Piccolo, yeah.
the thing of it is, I will give the Ocean Dub credit. Their screams are flat out superior, at least in when you compare like the Saiyan sagas. The
I
the
don't remember. It all blends together.
because the moment where Nappa kills Piccolo, Scott
Okay.
McNeil has just lungs that are three times the size of a normal person, apparently, because that scream, and then also the scream he does in Dead Zone for Piccolo when he's getting
Oh
ready to go
yes,
ape shit.
yes.
That
Right.
that oh.
Yeah,
And then you watch the Funimation redub of the Saiyan Saga, just, and that's it. I'm like, wah, wah.
It's
And
just
then
not as good.
and then Brian Drummond just kills it as Vegeta, which works when Vegeta's a villain.
Yes.
But then if you watch Ocean dub, because Ocean still did the dub for Canada and the UK, I believe.
Mhm.
If you watch
Yes.
if you watch like Boo Saga Vegeta with Brian Drummond, it just doesn't fit.
Interesting. I haven't seen that far. I only watched it up to because in Canada we got it up until the Frieza saga, and then it was like they'd play a bunch of reruns, and then they'd do new stuff, and then they'd start all over again, do a bunch of reruns, and that was about the time that they'd switched over to Funimation, and they had started.
Oh,
With
really?
Sabat. Yeah,
So I mean I know Ocean did the whole series because you can find it, but
yeah. We didn't get
maybe
the whole series.
maybe only the UK got it.
We have we in Canada have a separate dubbing group called Ocean Group, and they did a version of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball GT. um, which we saw, which we got. That was the first time we got Dragon Ball GT. So we didn't get, if you watch Dragon Ball GT, if you're familiar with the rap, we didn't get the rap in Canada.
Oh, did you get the original Japanese opener?
We got a variation of it. Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, the rap was.
Yeah.
Which Team 4-Star made fun of that too, but
Yeah.
anyway, speaking of dubs, though, we can swerve back into Godzilla, which
Yeah.
feel free to take detours. That's what this. It's part of the fun of watching the
excellent.
Arete podcast, because you. This is why I love doing live podcasts, because there's no editing. We just go where, like, we have a loose topic, but it's gonna go. You're talking about a Japanese film franchise. You're gonna go into anime, because even Godzilla went into anime.
It
Which
absolutely did. Yeah.
Which, holy crap. I
Well,
was
okay. So can we real quick just take a moment and talk about the Matthew Broderick movie? Can we talk about that for just a second?
Yeah, I guess.
Because I have one nice thing to say about the Matthew Broderick movie. So you're making a face at me, and I got one nice thing. It yielded the animated series, and the animated series is really good.
This is true. The animated series is really good, but here's the problem: it's not Godzilla.
Right? It's her son, and to be fair,
No, the whole thing is not Godzilla.
True.
Toho retconned it, and they. I don't love the movie, but I love it for the fact that Toho gave Hollywood the middle finger. For those who don't know, 2004's Godzilla Final Wars, and it's so clever what they did, because the lawyers at Toho are geniuses. They retain the trademark for that monster when it expired, and so they just renamed it Zilla or Zeta. And the only reason they did it, and they said this, the only reason they did it is so they could kill it a few years later in Godzilla Final Wars, and they do just that. It's a completely pointless scene. It does not contribute to the story at all, but Zilla appears, and Godzilla just wrecks her shit.
Yes,
it's does. I actually timed it. Her screen time is like 14 seconds.
No kidding. That scene's so good though. The music.
It really is.
Godzilla tossing him into the air. Oh, it's so good. It's just, yeah, it's everything I love about that movie's so weird, because it's part Godzilla movie, part weird kung fu movie, like mid to late 2000s kung fu movie. It's so, like, they're doing like karate fighting and stuff, and I'm like, what am I watching?
I don't think they knew.
It's like one of them is just straight up a James Bond movie, like a 60s James Bond or Sean Connery James Bond movie, because that's what was popular at the time.
And then Godzilla versus Gigan, which was back in the 60s, it's not a bad movie, but it does kind of have like that sort of James Bond feel to it a little bit, because of the whole, granted they're aliens, but the whole espionage plot.
Yeah,
it has elements of it. It's very much shot like an old school James Bond movie, or at least they tried. Yeah.
I haven't gone to Gigan yet. Gigan is one of my favorite monsters, because he's just so much. My favorite moment is when they just decide to go to space and all the space creatures. I'm really excited to watch Space Godzilla, because I've never seen Space Godzilla, and I'm so stoked on it.
Oh my god, oh god, I haven't watched that in so long. I remember not liking it as a kid, so it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, all the ones I remember liking. Like I just did I'm just about to do Mecha Godzilla, and I watched that one fairly recently. It was so much worse than I remember.
Oh no, well, the first one was
the first one's rough.
Yeah, but after that, anything with Kiryu after that or Mecha Godzilla is
they get good.
Well, and that's a perfect plot element as to why I would argue for sub versus dub, because they gloss over entirely the fact, at least as far as I can remember, that Kiryu is formed out of the bones of the original Godzilla from 1954.
Remind me, which one was Kiryu again?
Mecha Godzilla.
Oh, yes, I haven't watched that in a while. I don't remember that. What's interesting is for the large portion of the Godzilla franchise, that's not the original Godzilla. The original Godzilla dies at the end of the first Godzilla movie, so that's actually technically the second Godzilla.
Exactly. Yep.
And then they kill that. Well, to be fair, speaking of continuity in Godzilla is messy.
It's loose though.
One of them, it's like in one of the Ghidorah movies that introduces Mecha Ghidorah. I can't remember which one that is. they make it so that one involves time travel.
That's right. Oh my god.
Yeah, and that they come from a future where the dominant economic superpower is Japan, which I don't. It's arguable how accurate that became, but um, they've come back in time to stop that from happening, and they trick them into basically making it so Godzilla never existed, and then they make it so King Ghidorah exists instead, and they have to recreate a new Godzilla, which is now the technically the third Godzilla, I guess.
Yeah, that's where it gets messy because down the line, uh, they're not always clear as to whether it's a new Godzilla or I guess we didn't kill him. So
Yeah,
it gets a little unclear. And then even going back to the legendary MonsterVerse movies, we don't technically know if that's a new. It can't be a new Godzilla. Well, it might be a new Godzilla because of where they find it, and then they find the skeleton of another one.
Yeah,
It's all very unclear. But I think that was originally done. Well, I don't think it was originally done on purpose. I think that was because they didn't care. But then somebody had to be like, wait a minute, time out. People are going to ask. We have to kind of sort of answer this, but we can make it vague.
yeah, exactly. Well, I think they wanted to kind of sort of hint that the Godzilla that's in those movies is the same one that was in the original movies. I think because I rewatched the 2014 one, and there is a line where they talk about how they're gonna drop a nuke on them at the end of the movie, kill both the Mutos and Godzilla, and they're like the one we tried to hit him with before. So I think the opening credits of that movie is sort of implying that they've tried to nuke Godzilla before in the past. I think.
Correct. They have they definitely have. Which is the one that has the not it's not Shin Godzilla, it's another one. The Godzilla that's always overheating.
Oh, that's the Millennium Godzilla.
Yes, that one.
That's Godzilla 2000.
That's right. Yes, you're correct. And oh man, that's a movie again. I didn't like that one when I was a kid, and then I watched it again, and the whole bit where they, if I remember correctly, they sort of lull you in and think that the original Godzilla, the dad Godzilla, is going to die, and then his kid is going to take over, and then they totally pull the rug out from under you and have the kid Godzilla die.
I don't remember. To be fair, I watched that one like one time when I was a kid, and it was the English version, which I believe is different than the Jap. That's another one.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, it probably is. I am, and I might be thinking of a different movie actually. Hang on.
I don't remember. All I remember about that one is that they marketed it in Canada, anyways. They marketed it as a sequel to the Matthew Broderick one, and I remember I rented it from the video store and being like, "This isn't the Matthew Broderick universe. What is happening?" And then that movie was just very, as a 10-year-old, was very dull.
I might be, I might be thinking of a different one.
I don't remember. That plotline sounds familiar.
I know it's in a movie, but it is the Millennium Godzilla, but it might not be Godzilla 2000.
I know that he shows up because I was doing research about him. I know that he comes back in Final Wars. I do know that, and it's Manila. It's the one from the 60s.
Yeah, which that's a lot of people hated that because they wanted was okay. What is this one? Yeah. What movie is that from? Hang on, where is? Oh, it's Godzilla versus Destroya. I'm thinking of.
Oh yeah, that's another one I want to see. Those are all ones where it's like they were on the. I can picture them as a kid being on the shelf at the video store, being like, "I'm gonna watch that one day," and they never did. Like I recently I watched Ebura, the one with Ebura, the big lobster.
Which it's the Japanese is much better. Let's just leave it at that. It is much better.
I've never seen the dub. I know that Mystery Science Theater had a field day.
The dub is they didn't have a lot of work to do on that one. I'll tell you that.
That's one. It's very funny that Godzilla's not really in it. He's not really even part of the conversation. They just kind of run into him midway through the movie, and that's kind of the point where they're like, Godzilla's a good guy now.
Yeah.
He's no longer a metaphor for nuclear holocaust. He's now very much the good guy.
Yeah. Well, not, good guy's even not stressing it enough. He's downright the guardian of planet Earth.
Yeah. They're like waving at him at the end, being like, "Bye, bye, Godzilla." It's so funny, and that's when the costume starts looking rough as well.
Yeah, which again, they were for a while there, and understandably so, Toho was just in print money mode because for a while there, if Godzilla's in it, you know,
Yeah,
it's money.
What's interesting about it as well is it hits a point where budgets get cut, and it's like they start using stock footage, and it's like it becomes a matter of how can we maximize how much these make versus how much we spend on them, and you notice.
Yeah, especially a discerning adult. But you'll notice too that was when they started aiming Godzilla more and more towards children,
Absolutely.
and children do not notice. I know I didn't.
What's interesting about that genre of storytelling in Japan is that as they get newer, like they put enough of a budget into them where it's like these are impressive for what they are. And it's like it's sort of funny that the movies don't get that level of the television shows absolutely do, like your Kamen Riders and your Sentais. They get the money because they sell toys.
I was gonna say that's toy companies being like, make this so we can sell our shit, you know.
Yes,
and it
absolutely.
makes total sense. But I mean, Godzilla merch still sells to this day.
Godzilla still sells to this day. I mean, he's still a very marketable franchise.
Obviously, and it's also worth noting that Godzilla has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
It's there. It's there.
Wow, that's wild.
I wonder though, and I think about this a lot. Why Godzilla? Why is Godzilla such a part of even American consciousness? Obviously part of Japanese, but the world consciousness. You can go anywhere in the world, and somebody's gonna understand Godzilla.
Well, what's interesting about Godzilla to me is people around the world have a different perspective on it. I think in Japan, at least as evidenced by the movies to me, is they take it so much more seriously. To me, Godzilla was silly. Like that's just how I saw it, and it was fun. It was fun, and that's what it allowed it to retain such a presence in my life. So I think for people have a different memory of Godzilla. I think they remember the silly costumes and the goofy special effects, and that creates a nostalgia. At least I think so.
Big time, but I think there's something more to it than that. And I can't quite put my finger on it because there's been a lot of kaiju and monster movies. But Godzilla just for some reason, maybe it has to do with the ties to nuclear not holocaust, but nuclear war and the ever-present threat of basically imminent destruction. Because at the end of the day, Godzilla, especially in the newer iterations, like I can't stress enough how good of a movie Shin Godzilla is for what it is. It was like, no, we're bringing horror back to Godzilla and we're pulling out all the stops. And the best element of it is it keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
It's always getting worse. And then it gets to the point where Godzilla can't even control what's coming out of him. It's a horrifying movie on its face. Like the premise, there's some shots in that movie that are legitimately horrifying. Like the one that always got me was it's not a slug, but when Godzilla first comes out of the ocean and it's like that. And they did such a good job because that creature is in constant agony and it's it's horror in the true sense. Cause obviously it's not like scary, like, but it's just like, you think about if that was actually happening, how utterly terrifying that would be.
Yeah. I enjoyed the as an adult watching a Godzilla thing, I very much enjoy seeing bureaucratic government incompetence. And what's funny is it really harkens back to the first one where that movie is really just people standing in a room talking about what to do about Godzilla. It's like you see the beginning of the movie and it's like Godzilla's coming, and then they all talk about, well, when Godzilla gets here, it's going to be bad, and then he gets there, and it's bad, and it's like that's what Shin Godzilla really is. Like that, definitely watching that original definitely changed my perspective of that movie so much because I was like, this is Godzilla in its purest form. It's people not knowing what to do about it. I really enjoyed that.
And yet they somehow with the original, and there's others like Godzilla 1984, for example, where there's not a monster fight.
Yeah.
and yet the movie is still engaging. Now, Godzilla 1984, the American version, is not very interesting, but the original Japanese is. But Shin Godzilla is very much a return to form. And
Yeah, I appreciate it more now. It's funny when you initially approached me about talking about Godzilla. I was like, I had such a strong stance about how much I didn't like that movie, and I was so prepared to come on here and be like, I'm going to be the anti Shin Godzilla guy. This is going to be my hill, but it's not. It's just not.
because it's good. I remember being nervous, and I want to continue. Every time I think about it, I find out I'm like, okay, this week I'm going to sit down and watch Shin Godzilla because I have to. I can't passively watch it because I want to watch the Japanese, so I have to be able to read. And I find that my weekend is gone before I even get there, and I'm like, damn it. But
Yeah, yeah.
such is life when you're doing all kinds of different stuff. But
Fair enough.
I
What
am.
find, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say what I find interesting about Shin Godzilla versus what's interesting about the first three Godzilla movies is how in Japanese they're very much connected to each other, right? A big thing at the beginning of the first one, watching the American version, Godzilla's frozen, and we watched it again. We made a video, me and my brother. When we watched it, we are like, why is he frozen? He's frozen because at the end of the last one he got frozen, but
Exactly.
in the American version he's a different monster. He's like Gigantosaurus or something.
Yep.
But what's interesting in the Japanese version is how from the first to the third one, they have a Godzilla preparedness plan in the third one. They're very much, or no, sorry, not the third one, the fourth one, Mothra. They're like, they have a preparedness plan. They know exactly what to do. They're totally prepared for it. And initially I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny until you remember what Godzilla is a metaphor for. And you're like, oh yeah, of course they would be prepared for it.
They better be prepared for it. Yeah, he's come 3 times now. It's like, this is a problem that is not going away.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm so stoked because Godzilla -1. First of all, when I saw the trailer on Facebook randomly, I thought it was fake. I thought it was like a fan. Well, I didn't think it was fake per se, but I thought it was like a fan thing. And I'm like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
It's the first time that they're basically gonna. It's not a direct remake of the first one, but it's basic because they're going back to 1954.
Yes. Yes.
It's the first time they've ever done that outside of like a time travel element or a flashback.
Yeah.
Whoever did the cinematography should win.
It looks amazing.
Well, but not only that, there's something very, very subtle that they did that I love. The coloring and even some of the shots, how they're framed, it looks like they took an old World War II movie from the 60s.
Yeah.
It basically looks like Tora 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 in HD.
Oh wow.
And because the color, and which is weird because normally in my cinema I like bright, vibrant colors with a lot of contrast. These colors are ever so slightly muted, which gives it a dated look, and it is just, it's so good.
I loved how agile Godzilla was. Like I normally can't stand CGI Godzilla. Like as much as I love the MonsterVerse movies, I can't stand CGI Godzilla. Like he gotta be a guy in a suit. Like the thing I noticed watching the old ones is how much the modern Godzilla doesn't have any personality like he used to. Like there's a really funny moment in Ebra where like he's on the shore and he's in the water and he's just like kicking rocks at him and he's like fuck you, I gotta and that just doesn't exist in the modern ones. Or when in King Ghidorah where he just starts hucking rocks at him. It's just like, or he gets into like a boxing stance, he's got his hands up like this, he's ready to beat the piss out of him. I'm like, MonsterVerse Godzilla doesn't have this level of he just doesn't have this level of personality.
That's just it. It's lack of personality, and I totally understand why they went that direction. However, in God, what was the second one called? Was it All Monsters Attack? No, the second American one, the second Legendary Pictures one.
Oh, it's Godzilla King of the Monsters.
That's it. Yeah, I will give them this. This was, the shot was so good. It's when they're in the underwater lab or whatever.
Yeah.
And Godzilla swims up.
Oh, so cool. I mean, there's so that as an old school Godzilla lover, that second one, just seeing a fully big budgeted version of Ghidorah was like, there's just something that About that character I love so much. Seeing a big budgeted version of it, like I don't know if you're familiar with there's a YouTube reviewer. His name is Movie Bob, and his review was basically just him yelling in the camera with action figures, being like, "It was so awesome! It was like bang, 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 bang!" Yeah, that's an old school Godzilla lover. That's what that movie.
It really was, and Rodan never looked better.
Rodan, I realized I didn't appreciate him the first time. I appreciate him so much more because of one shot, and it's that one where he's flying over the city and it just destroys all the buildings. And I was like, oh, that's peak Rodan. Right
Which,
there.
but that's so funny you mentioned that, because that's a callback to the original Rodan before he became best. Before he and Godzilla became best buds, you know, in the '60s and '70s, is Rodan would destroy a city just by flying over it.
Yeah.
In the original Rodan movie, that's basically what happened.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen the original. I might double back and watch
It's
those later on. I haven't decided.
Which again, I haven't seen it in a long time because I watched it as a kid because I thought it was a Godzilla, because I knew Rodan, so I thought it was a Godzilla movie, and I'm just like, I probably didn't like it because I was like, where's Godzilla?
Fair enough. Yeah. The one that surprised me when I was reading about it was Mothra, just based on how much it's pretty much exactly the same as his movie with Godzilla, or her movie with Godzilla, I should say. It's exactly the same movie. Like Mothra versus Godzilla is almost exactly the same movie. And those twin characters, I had no idea they were so massive in Japan. Like apparently they're huge. Yeah, they're huge.
Ironically huge.
Yeah, when they show up in, like, whenever they would show up in a movie, in a Godzilla movie, that apparently that was like
huge. Well, thing. and it's a big deal, because that's why I was so thrilled that they were included, even though they didn't get as much. They weren't as integral to the plot as I would have liked in the MonsterVerse movie, because
were they in that?
Yeah, they're very, very briefly. That's why I was kind of disappointed. They were more focused on Kong. No, Kong's in the next one. I'm sorry. Yeah, they were there, but they changed it a bit, and it was a way that I'm nitpicking here. I didn't like the changes they made, but it wasn't so bad that it ruined it for me. But like you said, in Japan, to play the twins, that's a big deal. It's a very, very big deal.
I didn't know. I knew that they were incredibly popular characters. I didn't think to play. I mean, you could tell that they're different actresses. But some of them are more identical than others. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, but I think some of the newer iterations, and I could be wrong here. If I remember correctly, once technology became able to do this, it was one actress who was then like.
Oh.
I could be wrong. I think I read that somewhere. But there's so much Godzilla info, so don't quote me on that one.
They're a really cool effect in their original the Mothra movie, where like you see them on the shelf and you're like, a camera trail. How did you do that? And without CGI, there's so many effects in these movies where I'm like, without CGI, without green screen, without they're doing these things that are kind of visually impressive.
And what's fantastic is one of the many reasons to love Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies is they do a lot of the same stuff, but with modern cameras and lighting and whatnot. Yeah. It's the same tricks.
Yeah.
It's forced perspective, you know, bigger sets to make characters look smaller.
Yeah.
Crazy angles that mess with your perception. It's great. And I always love, because these days it's so easy to just film it on a green screen and then just shrink them down, but it just doesn't. I mean, it can work when they spend the type of money that VFX should be, but there is something just great about knowing like they couldn't have done that with CG because it didn't exist.
Exactly. There's so many. I did a big on my TikTok. I did a big moderately successful series where I watched all of the AFI's top 100 movies, and that was very much a thing of their times where it was like, this is impressive considering it's 1950 whatever. Like, this is an impressive effect. That happens sometimes with old movies like that, where you're like, this is before CGI could fix this.
Yep. And that's what I love about old practical effects, because it's like, okay, this is in the script. We have a problem. How are we going to do this? And they actually had to just figure out how to do it. And
instead of fixing it in post.
Yeah. Which, don't get me wrong, I love what they can do in cinema now.
Yeah.
But I do think that the industry as a whole has become lazy when it comes to effects. There's still some gems here and there where, like I said, the aforementioned Lord of the Rings, and then even some newer movies where they will elect to go practical rather than just, we'll just make it CG or whatever. All Quiet on the Western Front, the 2021 remake was a good example of that. They did use CG for safety reasons on some of, like, i.e. flamethrowers. I get it, even though
Yeah.
even though there are safe ways, well, safe in air quotes, there are ways to do it practically that aren't guaranteed death. I'm fine with it. CG the flames.
Yeah. You want them to be safe. Yeah.
Well, except I think there was actually one scene where they used practical flames because you can see the guys, I don't remember what the suits are called, but the guy's wearing basically one of those flame retardant suits.
Yeah.
So, I mean, kudos. I don't know that was necessary, but
I haven't seen that. That was one of those ones I was gonna watch because I had to watch the original and it was agonizing. So I was like, I wonder if the new one is any less agonizing. And it's on my list.
oh, you know what? The only thing I really don't like about the new one is the fact that it's called All Quiet on the Western Front.
Really?
If that movie had been called anything else, it would be like a 9.5 out of 10. But the story just deviates so much from the movie from the 30s and the original novel that it's kind of all quiet in name only. There are several key scenes that aren't in the new one.
Huh.
Like, i.e. the scene where, well, the scene where Ben dies, that's not in there. The scene where I forget the guy's name, but they're basically like, he's dying in the hospital and they're basically saying like, well, can I have your boots? You know, I call it the boots scene, which is
yes, I remember that. Yes.
But it makes up for it in other ways because they have the narrative thread of they have a narrative thread of showing that like uniforms are getting recycled, and that's how the movie starts, that kind of thing. So it's a good movie, but my only real issue with it is the fact that it's called All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah. The thing about the original one that's one of those ones I had to do. So the thing I remember most about it was being blown away by how sympathetic it was towards German people in the 1930s. I was like, this is really sympathetic considering where the world is right now. Like that blew my mind. And the fact that not a single person spoke German, I remember thinking was funny. I think those were the two jokes I made in my video.
There is a line in the original that to this day cracks me up, and I don't know why I find it so funny, but oh gosh, what's the guy's name? It's not Cat, it's the other older guy.
I don't remember. That was
Yaden. It's Yaden. They're talking about they're talking about going somewhere, and then Yaden just out of nowhere is like, what does he say? Something to like, something's like, now, remember, the Kaiser and I expect you back here at whatever 0900 or whatever. I don't know why I find that line so funny, but
that's funny. I remember just being like, I 30 minutes before I realized that they were supposed to be German. I was like, oh, they're supposed to be German. Oh.
I get it though, and that's why I was very happy that the 2021 version is in German.
Yeah.
I tried to watch. I don't like live action dubs. I can tolerate animated dubs if they're good, but I don't know if I'm just like OCD about mouth movements and whatnot, but it messes with me. So I, generally speaking, like for example, my girlfriend doesn't speak very much English, so if we're watching a show together, one of us is going to have subtitles, and it's always like, well, what's the original language of the movie? Because if it's originally in Spanish, then we'll watch it in Spanish with English subtitles, and then vice versa. If it's in English, or if it's a movie I've seen a million times, we can watch it in Spanish.
That's interesting you say that, because me and my brother were both learning different languages. He's learning Spanish, I'm learning Japanese, and we were talking about watching stuff. I'm watching all these Godzilla movies in Japanese, and I'm hitting that point where it's like, that's not what the subtitles mean.
I hate that. That happened to me with All Quiet because I don't speak fluent German, but I speak a fair amount. And anytime I watch a movie in Spanish, I'm like, that's not what the subtitles say. And it irks the living shit out of me. It happens to me with anime too. Like when I'm watching the original anime, Japanese, all the time in anime. So when I started watching subtitled anime, it was all fan subs. Yes, I'm that old. But the fan subs were really, really good because they actually translated, and they would throw editor's notes to explain cultural things, and I loved that. And then I started the first anime that I watched with subtitles was Naruto. I started watching it before it ever got released in North America. God, that was back in 2003 or 2004.
Yep, yes, it would. Yeah, that would be.
And then I remember I was stoked because Naruto was gonna get the English dub, and I waited because this was before streaming, or it was right in the no, this was before streaming. Certainly before it was widely. So I'm ready for it to premiere, and then the show opens, and it's one of the most horrendous dubs I've ever heard in my life. It's so bad. Sasuke sounds like a fucking surfer, and I don't know why. And the acting on everyone is so flat. It was just the shits. So anytime I hear somebody talk about how great the Naruto dub was, and I'm like, clearly you have not. Yes, you must have heard something different, because I heard, like, I assume you've seen the Japanese version of Naruto.
A little here and there. I'm not a huge Naruto and One Piece. I kind of miss those.
Well, One Piece is trash. That's right. I said it. Which that's another. What a lot of
episodes long.
Oh my god! And a lot of people forget. I haven't seen the Japanese. Oh, sorry, I haven't seen the Funimation dub of One Piece, but I saw the 4Kids dub, and that was fucking awful.
I did not forget the 4Kids dub.
Oh man, that was rough.
They made kick-ass theme songs though. Okay.
That's fair. Hey man, Digimon still rocks.
I love the because I recently watched the new version of Shaman King. I love the 4Kids Shaman King.
I loved Shaman King, man. I loved it.
4Kids Shaman King.
Well, but that dub wasn't that bad. Well, okay, there were elements that were that bad.
It was in the sense, if you go and watch the Netflix adaptation of it, you will realize how.
Oh, did they redub it?
They did. There's a new one. There's a remake that's out where Netflix just put it out, not just, but fairly recently, and it's some of the original voice cast from the 4Kids come back, but it's like R-rated, so it's super weird. Yeah, it's like it's crazy violent, like off-puttingly so.
Oh, you know what? I'm completely, because I did see some episodes of the 4Kids dub, but I remember I love Shaman King, but I watched fan subs of the original Japanese dub, which it's so the series itself. The writing, which again, I'm going to check out the Netflix version because I love Shaman King. Shaman King is an underrated series, and I think the art style puts off a lot of people, and I get it.
Yeah.
But for example, Yo in the 4Kids dub, at least, why is Yo 35 years old?
That's just what anime protagonists in dubs just sounded like back then. They all had that, like him, Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh. They all
Yugi.
Like 40-year-old men voicing them. It's just how it works.
Oh my god, that's so funny to watch. And then you have Ren's voice, which he was Len in the 4Kids dub. Tao Ren.
That was so weird because going to that Netflix show, they all have their Japanese names, and it's like what's his name? In the Japanese version, he's Toro, the guy with the surfboard.
Oh, I can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about.
In English, he's Trey Racer. That's who he is in the English version. But yeah, he's like, so, but he's got the same, him and his sister have the same voice in this new version. So she's calling him by his Japanese name. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening. Or the best one is Morty. You want to talk 30-year-olds versus a child. Let's talk Morty for a second.
That's true.
Dub, it's the same voice, and they give him like 1,000 times more serious dialogue, and it's 1,000 times funnier because this voice actor just isn't meant for this kind of dialogue. It's super funny.
I will say, when it comes to foreign characters, that's where Japanese dubs really suffer, because as Americans, we're used to accents, whereas the vast majority of the Japanese public may not be as used to it, particularly when speaking Japanese. But I will say Faust the Eighth is not terrible in the Japanese dub, but they take it to a very comical place in the 4Kids dub. But I hate and love it at the same time, because I'm a big Faust nerd. I have where are you at? Where are you? There you are. I have, it's one of the coolest things I own. It's for those of you who can't see, it's Faust, but it's, as you read it, one side is the original German and the other,
Huh.
you can't see it. So it's got English and German, which is very good for learning German
Yeah.
because it is, and it's a, from what I can tell, it's a pretty good translation. But yeah, so I'm a big Faust nerd, and actually I have this running joke with Virus, who is my co-host for the Toon Talk 2.0 podcast. I constantly talk about how a lot of my first exposure to literature is like television and movies.
Oh yeah.
I learned about Faust from Shaman King.
That's yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of mythology that I learned from movies, and I mean, my love of Greek mythology comes right from the Disney movie, and being like that Disney movie is. That was like the first time in my life I was like, it's not book accurate.
Yeah, and but that's I constantly, because at least I don't know how old you are. I assume we're fairly close in age. You're in your 30s, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, we were, when we were growing up, there was this whole like war on television for some reason.
Yeah.
At least with children, it was like TV's bad for you; it'll rot your brain. I'm like, no.
Yes.
I learned about so many Shakespeare from the show Gargoyles, the Disney show Gargoyles,
Yes. Absolutely.
Macbeth, A Midsummer Night's Dream, the
Yeah.
whole concept of Oberon and Oberon's children, a little bit of
Yep.
Norse mythology with the Eye of
Yep.
Odin. You know, so much. And what show was that? I saw an Easter egg, and I felt, oh, what show was that? What show was that?
Oh,
What show
it's
was that?
Are you thinking about DuckTales? Where
No,
they
no,
have the
it's a newer
uh,
show.
oh,
Oh,
no,
it was Young Justice.
oh, okay.
There's an episode, I can't remember which episode it is though, but there's an episode where if you look in the background, you see the Phoenix Gate and the Grimoire Marcanorum.
Oh, really?
But, well, it makes sense because Greg Weisman wrote both shows, but I saw that.
Interesting.
I've seen that series so many times, and this last time I was watching it, I just looked in the background. I'm like, holy shit, that's the Phoenix Gate.
Huh. That's a fun ref.
And there's
I
some
haven't-
younger people that are listening to this that are like, what the hell is the Phoenix Gate? Go watch Gargoyles. It's on Disney Plus. You would thank
Do
me
it.
later.
Yeah, both of us. You'll think both of us.
Yeah,
He's right. He's
it's
right.
so good.
It is ahead of its time, I would argue.
That's the Greg Weisman.
underappreciated.
Yeah, that's the Greg Weisman curse because Young Justice, same thing.
I would have said the same thing, except for I haven't seen the newer seasons. I hear it declines in quality.
Yes and no.
They didn't put any. They put them on anything here in Canada. I only got the first 2 seasons.
Well, it's on Max. I don't know if you guys have Max up there.
I don't. A lot of stuff. We have a streaming service called Crave, and a lot of stuff that goes to Max goes to Crave, or Amazon.
Well, I think you can buy it on Amazon, but you might check Crave because I know here in the States it's on HBO Max. Which, by the way, people who don't know, our friend is from Canada.
Yes, I'm from Canada. Our world is slightly different than yours.
A smidge.
Smidge. It's largely the same, but it's also slightly different.
That was the weirdest thing because I've only been to Canada proper. Well, no, I've only been to Canada one time, and it was for 3 hours. And it's just, that's a funny story. I'll tell you because it's very funny actually. We were at the time I was in Michigan, and we were in the Upper Peninsula, and we were like, well, I mean, Canada's right there, and I've never actually been to Canada, so fuck it, let's go. So at that point, we went to Sault Ste. Marie. And yeah, we just rocked Canada for 3 hours. We went to a Tim Hortons, did the Canadian things.
Like one does.
Yeah, like one does. And the funniest part about that was it struck me as so odd because if you had kidnapped me and not taken me to Tim Hortons, but if you had kidnapped me and just dropped me where I ended up in Canada, I wouldn't have known except a random word here and there. Because we were in a mall and I overheard 2 girls talking, and one of them, I guess they must have been in college or school or whatever, because she was talking about her marks, and the entire conversation was just like something you'd hear here, except we don't use marks in the U.S. We say grades. And I was just like, wow, that's hilarious to me. I love it. And then I have friends all throughout Canada where most of the time I'll forget I'm talking to them until they say something that's a little bit more Canadian. I'm like, oh yeah, he is from Canada.
I had a similar experience. I visited a friend in Toronto. She was getting married in Toronto, and she and her husband are from England. And there's a lot of English slang that they were saying, and a lot of Canadian slang where they'd be like, "Huh," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I guess you don't have that in Britain." Yeah, it happens a lot. Weirdly, it happens more often than you think.
It happens a lot with Canadians and Americans, I would imagine, because again, most of us have at least similar accents until you get ironically further north in Canada and further south in the US. But right there at the border, it's usually pretty close.
Or further east as well. That's where you got
That's
your Newfies.
yeah, well, yeah,
accent.
yeah.
But yeah, no, we're pretty up in Western Canada. We're fairly Americanized, especially as you get closer to just because your guys' pop culture is so like it's on our televisions. You get like a certain percentage of Canadian television, but it's 90% American.
Well, that's the law up there, isn't it? There's
yeah. You have to have a certain percentage of Canadian stuff, and it's very funny as you get older discovering what is and is not Canadian. That you're like, oh, you didn't see that? Oh, okay. Like
I had
a lot where it's like I had no idea that was Canadian.
I've had that conversation with my buddy Toast. He lives in Toronto. We've had him on the podcast before, and we had a very similar conversation. It's like, oh, you don't have that there? I'm like, yeah, that must be Canadian or something. But so we went to Canada for 3 hours, and then I find this so funny. So we get to the border of Canada, and we show them our passports, obviously, and then she just says, I'll never forget it because she had a bit of an accident. She's like, you have any weapons, eh? And I just went, no, ma'am. She's like, oh, welcome to Canada. I was like, wow, that was easy. And then we come back to the United States, my home country, my passport. I was born here. Like, we were at the border for 25 minutes.
Wow.
And I know exactly what they were doing because I saw the screen. I saw a bit of his screen.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they thought we went on a drug run.
Oh, because you were just gone for 3 hours. Oh,
we were just driving around for 3 hours, and I thought what I thought looked like, because let's be real, there are chips in your passport.
Yeah,
it's not a secret, but I saw what looked like a GPS map that showed a pretty circular route, so I'm pretty sure it was us, and I'm like, oh shit. Like,
oh, no.
I turned to my girlfriend at the time. I'm like, shit, they might search the car, which was fine. We didn't have anything, but like,
yeah.
I was like, don't freak out if they tell us to get out, because I'm pretty sure they're gonna sweep us for drugs.
Yeah, fair. No, especially because at a certain point, we had a certain narcotic become legal that you don't have legal in the States, so you have every reason to come up here for.
This was before that, but yes.
Oh, this is before that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I know a lot of people who did that, who skipped up here for. We became known as Canada, land of the free weed.
Well, there's a lot of states down here that are legalizing it even for recreational use. So it's like, I think it's a matter of time before the U.S. follows suit. It's stupid, and I don't even partake, but it's just silly.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I never understood it. Just there's reasons why, but I never fully understood. It just made so much sense economically. And it was such a boom for us, and it's super weird because speaking of Americans, I grew up. We're very much the same age. So you probably grew up with Nancy Reagan era politics of anti-drug use.
That sentiment, yeah, it was a touch before my time, but
winners don't do drugs. Did you ever get
that in your arcade? Just say no.
Just say no. So I have an image of like buying drugs as walking down a dark alley and it's a guy in a trench coat. Here, I just walk into a store and buy it. It's the trippiest thing of like 20 years of being told, no, it's a creepy guy in a trench coat. And it's just some nice lady at a store. It's super weird, even for me now in 2023.
Yeah, it's you just walk into it's like, this sounds weird, but could you put on a trench coat?
yeah. Can you just put on some sunglasses and a trench coat?
I kind of want the experience.
I used to order it off of the internet, and I used to have it mailed to me, and I'd walk into the post office and pick it up, and I just have this image of Nancy Reagan being like, just say no. It was weird. It was a weird moment in time.
Speaking of just say no, I don't know if this even aired. I assume it probably did. Did you ever see the cartoon All Stars to the Rescue television special?
I had it favorited on my YouTube for the longest time because I thought it was hilarious.
I love that thing.
Oh,
I watched it as a kid, and I still love it to this day. It is so unbelievably just campy, but I'm gonna be honest, I kind of like it.
I mean, look, as someone who is like, I loved all of those characters. It was a crossover, man.
It was the Avengers before we had the
yeah, it was
Avengers.
exactly. It was
I
like
got to
the
watch
Avengers.
I got to watch Michelangelo, Alvin, and fucking Kermit from the Muppet Babies say, "Don't do drugs, man."
I mean, sure, the message was a little lame, but the messaging as it was delivered was pretty darn cool. The message itself was maybe a little hacky, but
you know the one thing I did like about the
Presentation.
to sort of speak up for that special, I did like how the young lad who was going down a dark path, I do like how he ultimately was encouraged to change his ways, and it was when the smoke monster started trying to get his little sister to
yeah,
partake. And
it's funny.
now it would be a totally different conversation. You'd be like, you can go to his little sister. It's like, stay out of my weed. I paid money for this.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be good money. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was like, is that a Schedule 1 drug now? Or no? Okay, it's Schedule 2. Where it's good. It's fine. We're fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
We're less concerned about the Schedule 2 stuff.
But before I forget, I'm going to tell the viewers really quick another thing they can enjoy buying. It is also fully legal. Is your we're late for you guys up in the Great White North, but you can get your Thanksgiving sets still from Stevie Wicks, your wood-wicked Thanksgiving set, and we're going to give you some ASMR real quick. Listen to that wick go.
Ooh.
And now you're very tired.
I do feel slightly sleepier. Yeah.
There you go. But they are available at steviewicks.com. Use promo code Arete for 10% off your order. Get them before they are gone. They are available until the day before American Thanksgiving, which I believe is the 27th, but I'm stupid and not looking at a calendar, so give me one moment.
I mean, my Thanksgiving's in October.
I know, so we're late. Oh, sorry, no, it's 23rd. That would have been super late. But yeah, Canadian Thanksgiving is in October.
Yeah, it's a day where it's just like, oh yeah, it's Thanksgiving.
Well, to be fair, it's it's a very different reason for Thanksgiving in Canada, if I'm aware. Yeah, so
it's not the same.
It's not the same sentiment either. It's I forget the gentleman's name, but he was an unsuccessful expedition to try to find the Northwest Passage, correct?
You're taxing like elementary school history there. I honestly don't remember. I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think I'd heard that ours is the actual date the Mayflower landed, and yours is not. I think I'd heard it. I don't.
Well, it doesn't. To be fair, it doesn't commemorate the Mayflower landing. A lot of even Americans don't know this. It commemorates, I forget the tribe's name, but basically, when the let's see.
They don't teach us a lot about American Thanksgiving.
Well, why would they? You know. But to be fair, they don't really teach American children this part either. So the Pilgrims on the Mayflower, when they landed, everybody knows the story of Squanto and how that Native American tribe helped them through the winter. But what they don't tell you is after that, after they made it through and helped them, they were like, hey, there's this other tribe and we kind of hate those sons of bitches. So can you come with us with your boomsticks and let's just waste these motherfuckers? And they did. Huh. And then when that harvest came, they had a celebratory feast to commemorate.
Now that you've said that, that does sound familiar. I don't know where I heard that. That does sound familiar. Now that you've said that.
Oh yeah, they don't teach Americans that. So
no.
I like I said, with most other things, I'm right in the middle when Americans, and I'm not in this camp. I don't think Thanksgiving is evil, but there are people who say things like, well, Thanksgiving isn't about, celebrating, killing of indigenous people. And I'm like, actually.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Thanksgiving is about having an awkward family dinner where an uncle says something inappropriate.
There you go.
That's what Thanksgiving's really about.
But that's what I tell them. I'm like, actually, it kind of is.
Huh. Yeah.
Just not all the natives.
Just
some.
All of them. Just some of them. Some of them. A point I want to go back to.
Have your turkey guilt free. But yeah, back to GODZILLA.
Yeah. Well, just adjacent. It's funny you had said that Japanese people largely cast Japanese actors in their thing. Japanese speaking actors. I want to talk about my favorite character thus far in the Godzilla franchise,
Ooh.
and that's Astronaut Glenn. I need to talk about Astronaut Glenn because when I started watching it, I started watching it in Japanese, right? And he's speaking Japanese, and I'm like, wow, this guy's speaking fluent Japanese. Good for him. And then I'm like, I wonder what this looks like in English in the dub. So I put on the dub. No, he's speaking English. He's speaking English in the dub, like fluent English, perfect English, one-to-one English, and they dubbed him into Japanese in the Japanese version, and then in the dub, all the rest of the characters are dubbed into English. So like, as a person who has like made movies and like knows how movies are made, I'm like, how did that work? Like, did he say his lines in English and then someone had to translate them into Japanese? Does he know Japanese? Like, and then you try to Google it and there's no information on this actor or this character or anything. I was like, I need to know how this worked.
I would wager to say for the time he probably spoke Japanese.
Interesting. My brother said maybe he had an earpiece and they were feeding him the lines in English.
I forget what year that movie was, though, but at the time, I don't know that would have been feasible for most Americans.
I don't know, because
without prior knowledge of the language.
Yeah, well, there's a big scene where he's having a romantic scene with a Japanese lady, and I'm like, the timing of that would be so janky if he didn't at least understand Japanese.
Yeah.
It was super weird.
Oh, God, there's a, not to get off topic again, but oh, Jesus, there's a... One of the things that if you're fortunate enough, you will be watching an originally Japanese anime series and the characters speak English.
Oh, yeah. Weird.
Well, so some studios do it well.
Yeah.
Others not so much. I was watching a series because I'm not ashamed, but like most people don't know this, I'm a sucker for a really good shoujo series. I'm not going to lie. But the production budgets are usually lower because they don't need stellar animation. There is a series called Itazura na Kiss that is hilarious. But there is a scene where the main male character is on a date with an English woman.
Oh.
And this is the line, which keep in mind, this character is English from the United Kingdom. And they didn't even go to the trouble of getting an English actress. They just have some poor Japanese voice actress trying to speak English. And it's very clear that neither one is very strong in their English. She goes, I don't know if I will get used to speaking a Japanese. And then he goes, it's all right. You get used to it. And then later, the same guy and the main female character get married and they have their honeymoon in Hawaii, which I guess is a big thing for Japanese people. I did not know this. There's a moment where, because her character doesn't speak any English, and she gets approached by these two giant, super racist looking Hawaiian dudes.
Yeah.
And he goes, stop it. She's my wife.
Oh, goodness.
I am just dying laughing, and I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, wait a minute. So when we have movies where people speak Japanese, for example, is that what they hear?
I think so. Well, I mean, to go back to Godzilla, I always thought it was funny in Final Wars when they cut to New York and they think New York is just stereotypical black guys. So yeah, very much. That's what they think of America.
I absolutely love seeing depictions of Americans from other cultures. They are.
Yeah.
It actually, you know what's funny? A lot of people would think you'd be insulted. And actually, I'm like, oh, I'm not insulted, but I'm like, you know what? It is kind of a shame because I think that Canada too, to a certain extent, I'm sure. But I think the United States gets a really bad rap about being all stereotypically the same. And it's like, no, you don't get how diverse of a place this really is.
Yeah.
Like, I think my favorite is, I don't think it's this way anymore, but there was a time where there were a lot of anime series where if somebody was American, they were a cowboy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's a old Sentai series that's like that. Yeah, he comes from America. Well, actually, a more recent Sentai series that's like that, where the character, his aesthetic is he's a cowboy because he was living in America.
And the best part is he's probably from New York in that series. Is like, oh, New York, we ride our bulls to the train station.
I can't remember. I think he's a Japanese guy. He was a Japanese guy, so he spoke He spoke mostly Japanese. The funniest one though is if you're a Power Rangers fan, the Japanese version of Dino Charge. Dino Charge? I think it's Dino Charge. The Sion Ranger. It's a light blue. In the Japanese version, he's played by a portly white man who has just the thickest American accent I have ever heard. His Japanese is horrendous. I don't understand why he's in this show, but it pulls you right out of it. You're like, yeah, this is clearly a guy who I guess couldn't find work in America and came to Japan.
So speaking of Americans and Japanese movies, how about bringing up Godzilla Final Wars again? Dan Severn
Really?
is in that movie.
I did not know that. I've seen that movie and I didn't know that.
It's
been a while since I've seen that movie.
It's a trip, man. It's weird to watch. Not gonna lie.
The thing I remember about that one was when I first watched it, I would watch the dubs because that's what I grew up with. It wasn't until recently I really got into the Japanese versions, but finding the Japanese version of that is confusing because there's periods in that movie where characters speak English. So you're like skimming through it to see if it's a dub, and you're like, oh no, it's this part's in English, and you watch it, and you're like, no, this is in Japanese because there's characters who speak English in it.
And I'm sorry, I don't know why I got those names confused. It's not Dan Severn, it's Don Fry. But they both have the stash. Yeah.
That's funny.
It's still it's weird, man.
That's a weird movie. That's one I do want to get back to watch again because I really enjoyed it.
But you got to think that was a weird time, particularly for Godzilla movies, because very much a transition for them where they were starting to use computer generated effects, but they were also trying to avoid it very heavily.
That era that's the Millennium era. They've got some good stuff in there. A couple of their Mechagodzilla movies. That's where they decided that Mechagodzilla would be piloted.
Yeah.
I've heard. I haven't seen them, but I've heard they're good.
Yeah, because it's
SOS
like
is also good as well.
Yep, it is. Yeah, there's Godzilla's an interesting
It's such an enduring franchise that it's one of those like you pick one. If you don't like one, you just pick another one, and you're bound to like it.
That's the beautiful part, especially now, because we're reaping the benefits of having the entirety of its catalog from 1954 to today, which I'm going to be so miffed because hopefully I'm alive to see this when Godzilla turns 100.
Oh, that would be rad.
That's gonna be fucking weird.
So you mentioned that you didn't like Kong versus Godzilla.
I shouldn't say I didn't like it. I liked it. There were elements that I did not like, i.e. the whole, what do they call that? The hidden Earth thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that was probably a sort of a reference to the Lost World, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But Kong is like the king, and he gets his special little axe thing.
The part of that movie that frustrated me was how Millie Bobby Brown had nothing to do in it. She's clearly only in that movie because she was contractually obligated to be. Another thing I enjoyed about that movie was how it stopped any sense of being realistic. The first one was like, yeah, this is a realistic take on Godzilla. We very much exist in the real world. And then by the third one, they're like, nah, flying cars and Mechagodzilla, baby. Like, none of this makes any sense anymore. Who gives a shit? Which,
to be fair, is kind of a microcosm of Godzilla as a franchise. But
yeah, absolutely. I will say I did not care for Mechagodzilla's design. It felt like
I didn't either.
This is the proto one. Like, I'm waiting for the moment where he transforms into actual Mechagodzilla. So that's why I'm kind of hoping he comes back in a sequel. Because there is a new one coming.
There is a new one. So
that was funny because they were very much like, no, Kong versus Godzilla is the last one. This franchise is done. And then it made way more money than they were expecting. And then they were like, well, on the other hand.
I mean, they're both alive.
Yeah. Oh, no, this time they're teaming up. Although I heard.
They did team up, rumors, kind of.
But this one's, it's no longer Kong versus Godzilla. It's Kong x Godzilla. And it's, I can't remember who they're fighting. At one point, the rumor was he was going to fight Space Godzilla, which, like, it was going to be space stuff again. And look. I'm 100%, 1,000% all in for like fully budgeted Space Godzilla. Like, I love Space Godzilla.
Well, now they have the luxury because now you technically have two, because you have Hollywood Godzilla and then you have the original Toho Japan Godzilla. True. And Japan's very much going back to its roots, which is super smart if you think about it, because Toho makes money regardless. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let the US have their turn at going super random, crazy, and then Japan's going to go back to the roots. And if you're a hardcore Godzilla fan, you'll like it all for different reasons, and you'll just give them your money. So
Here's a question that's Godzilla adjacent. Are you an Ultraman fan?
I haven't seen enough
Oh, you've
to.
not seen Ultraman? Oh man, I could recommend you some solid Ultraman movies. If you like Shin Godzilla, you should watch Shin Ultraman. Shin
Oh,
Ultraman is so good.
really?
It's so good. Oh yeah, it's the just the correct it's the correct partition of taking itself 1,000% seriously. Like, what if Ultraman exists in the real world, but it's just silly enough to be fun? Like, I didn't care for Shin Kamen Rider. I thought Shin Kamen Rider was too dark. Shin Ultraman strikes that balance, and it does a really good job of dumbing down the mythos, because Ultraman has kind of even more so than Godzilla, has an unbelievably complicated and convoluted mythos that's really kind of hard to get into. But it's one of those franchises that you could pick up a series from today. They're still making it, and it's great. It's the funny thing about Ultraman is much like Godzilla, because he's just a guy, he has to convey the fact that he's very big. And so a lot of his fights, he's moving so slowly because he has to. And it's just really funny. There's a really funny one that came out 2010. It was Ultraman and the Ultra Brothers. That was like my getting me back into this.
Ultraman and the Ultra Brothers.
It's so good. It's so corny. It's what got me back into this space. Yeah, they're really fun. It's really fun. If you like Godzilla, I definitely recommend checking
It sounds interesting, very, very much so. My only thing is, God, where do I find the time? Because believe it or not, which is my next segue where I'm going to start peer pressuring you.
Yeah, okay.
Sir,
Go for it.
I've seen your content. I've had a conversation with you. You need a podcast.
I would love a podcast.
And we can help at Arete Media.
I'm all the way in, man. I enjoy your guys' content. I enjoy engaging with you. I appreciate that you actually watch my videos.
Oh, dude, you have such an interesting perspective most of the time, and I love, because most of your well, I shouldn't say most of your content that I've seen is you responding to people and kind of offering a different perspective where you've never been disrespectful, and that's so rare.
Yes.
Because God, look at our comment section. It's like, well, you two are clearly stupid. That's a polite one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, no, man. It's our whole shtick is we just like a conversation, and a lot of times because people have the attention spans of gnats, and apparently it's too much to ask someone to watch an entirety of a 50-second clip. But
I have the same issue.
So much of what we say gets taken out of context, and it's so frustrating. I mean, I don't care that much, but it's really frustrating because people will say something, and it's like, well, you clearly didn't watch, because if you had, you would know that we addressed that. So,
look, I don't agree with everything everyone says, but we can have a discussion and remain respect. I've had to put my foot down a few times and be like, I'm judge, jury, and executioner of my page. There is no free speech. If you say something that's mean or cruel or unnecessary, you're gone. We're gonna keep this nice and respectful. And
my general guideline, at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm very big on not deleting comments. I've only deleted a handful of 4+ years of podcasting.
Yeah.
One of which was somebody who I don't know who it was, and they're lucky I don't know who it was, because you're lucky I don't know who you were, because they were saying awful things about a friend of ours who had just recently died. Oh. So I actually said, I basically said, fuck you, and I reported his ass to YouTube because I wasn't going to stand for that. Basically, you can say whatever you want about me, but when you start talking shitty about other people, that's where I put my foot down, because you're a commenter on YouTube. I really don't care what you have to say about me, but
pretty much.
No, I get it.
I haven't deleted. I try not to delete. Usually I just ignore. Early on in my TikTok journey, there was a lot of like engaging with people who were engaging in bad faith and misunderstanding that it was bad faith, and having to learn to pick which ones I go for. Which and I usually don't respond to negative comments. Well, I'd say it's about 50-50, because sometimes I just have fun with it, but it becomes very clear when there's no point, because you're not going to reach this person, you're not going to change their mind, nor are you going to come to any sort of understanding. I will engage like hell with positive comments or even questions. I love questions,
and general discussions. If you disagree with me, but you're respectful, I will absolutely engage in a discussion with you.
Same. I mean, for me, a big thing is if I feel like I can contribute something additionally to what they're saying, or learning not to, or a big thing I had to learn, and this is going to sound really arrogant. I don't mean it to come across as such, but learning that I'm smarter than a great deal of the internet. And sometimes people are going to say things that are hysterically stupid, and you just cannot respond to everyone.
Yeah.
There's some people who they don't have the same level of media critical thinking that you do, because they just don't like the lot of, you heard a lot of not enough people watch bad movies. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, you've probably seen me, engage with their content a lot, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Escape Pod podcast.
I've seen you engage with them. I want to check their stuff out, but I have not seen any of their stuff, but I have seen your responses.
People get mean to them, and I feel bad for them, because there's a lot of people who are really unnecessarily cruel to them. I enjoy their stuff because they come at a lot of movie criticism from the perspective of regular people. I don't feel like enough people are like, especially on TikTok, are appreciative of the fact that not everybody knows everything about every little piece of news or information that relates to the Marvels.
And I love that perspective, because usually, generally speaking, when my friend group and I, if we go see a movie, I'm usually the one who is the odd man out, because they'll, like, for example, we went and saw the 2021 Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh yes,
and
I saw your guys' stuff on that.
This is literally how that conversation, as we were leaving the theater, went. It was, wow, that was awesome, that was so cool, and I said, that fucking sucked. But
look,
by the time I was done with my rant, I had them at least less enthused, if not completely on my side.
I like that movie.
Oh my god, it was horrendously bad. There was not.
That's why I love. That's why I'm the type of guy where I love bad movies unironically, or no, I love them ironically, I should say. Where it's like, I appreciate that maybe it's not that great. I have my criticisms, like, why wasn't Cole Johnny Cage? That's a big one.
Why was so I call that movie Mortal Kombat Preparation.
Yeah, Preparation M.
Because, okay, end of the first movie, Kung Lao's dead, which nobody cares about Reiko, but Melina's dead, Goro's dead, Sub-Zero's dead before the first tournament, because I know Sub-Zero, that was one thing somebody said, talking what you said, somebody's like, well, Sub-Zero dies, and I'm like, yeah, in the tournament. We haven't had a tournament yet.
No, we haven't even done Mortal Kombat yet. No, that's the whole point of that one. That was weird. And then they're like, Carl Urban is Johnny Cage, and I'm like, hey, I love Carl Urban, but really?
I was pulling.
Why are we?
I was pulling for the Miz.
Oh, that would have been good. He would have been good. So, yeah, someone more Hollywood. Like, he's got to be Hollywood. I just Carl Urban he's too everyman.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, to be fair, if anybody can pull it off and surprise me, it'll be Carl Urban.
But I just love movies that are stupid and violent for no reason other than they're stupid and violent. Like,
so Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it.
I love dumb, like The Immortals. The Immortals is one of my all-time favorite movies.
You will love Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
I've seen clips of it. I think I've seen most of the first one, because I got to where Raiden started to talk, and I was just like, I can't do it. And I turned it off. But it's one of those ones where I'm at that point now where I can be critical of a thing and I can turn it into content.
And then there are some movies where I will say, like, I'll be like, hey, listen, I know I'm the odd man out, but this is how I feel about it, and here's why.
Here's the thing. I have spent a great deal of my life being known as the guy who hates things that everyone loves. I will never forget. This is one of my funniest. I will say this now. I've since changed my opinion on this. But for the longest time, I did not care for The Godfather. I did not care for it. I didn't.
You know what though? You know what? I understand.
Right.
I can see why.
Same now that I've since rewatched it for content, I can now say that. But I once said that to a friend. I said I did not care for Godfather. And a random stranger at a line in a movie theater turned around and screamed at me for 5 minutes about how wrong I was. And I've since rewatched it for the show, and I love it. I think it's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. I love it, and I
Like,
appreciate it for what it is.
yeah, it's good, but I can
Yeah,
understand why somebody might not. But like, for perfect example, I really like Rocky Five.
I love Rocky Five. I love all the Rocky movies.
I
I mean,
my my
that's
ex
another franchise I could talk.
my ex roommate. It started as a joke, but if there was a Rocky religion, he would definitely have been a zealot against Rocky Five, because
I
he would
mean,
he would be like Rocky one's just, it's the classic, it's the greatest because it was the first and it started everything.
yeah,
Rocky 2 is great because the champ, the Italian stallion actually comes back and beats the champ. Rocky 3 has to come back from nothing, and Rocky 4 is just like America,
yeah.
fuck yeah.
It's the one where he beats communism.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
fourth one,
Rocky
yeah,
defeats communism, and then he said,
yeah.
and then there's the one we don't talk about.
Okay, here's what I'll say in defense of it. I get it, because obviously there's no boxing match at the end of it. It ends with a street fight, and who cares?
But
But
where do you
Tommy
go?
Gunn,
Where do you go after you've defeated communism?
well, what's funny about Rocky Five is a lot of modern medics and boxers say that were that movie to take place today, he would have been cleared just fine. Like, our understanding of that level of brain damage is not the same as it was back in. But I want them to make Rocky 7. I made a video about this once. I want them to be Rocky 7, and I want it to be Rocky comes back from retirement and he beats a Jake Paul.
I love it. I
That's,
started laughing, and I love it.
he doesn't have to be specifically Jake Paul, but it should be specifically Jake Paul.
It should be Jake Paul.
He'd do it. He's an actor. He would take $1 million to
he would totally do it.
Rocky 7.
He would
But
totally.
that's what
Yeah, he would do it. That'd be so
like,
awesome.
I saw a video where Sylvester Stallone was like, "What do you do for Rocky 7?" I'm like, "Have him beat up Jake Paul." It's the most logical thing.
Well, and then I love the beginning of the training montage for Rocky Balboa, where it was like, you got arthritis in your knees, so you can't lift weights, and he goes through, and Rocky's just like, yeah, he's right.
Those movies are nothing without, like, I didn't care for Creed 3.
I didn't.
It was missing Rocky. It was missing Rocky so much.
It was missing Rocky, and this is what happens when anime fans don't have someone in their ear going, yeah, it works in anime.
It's a little stylized, I will agree.
But here, maybe not.
I will say, though, that one shot of them both punching each other in the jaw at the same time, that's ripped right from Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, hardcore. And he said as much. Michael B. Jordan said as much.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I quite like that shot. But no, I really like Creed 1, because I was a big fan of
I loved Creed.
Creed
Creed 2
good,
Creed 2 wasn't terrible, but it wasn't.
I love the cinematography in the first one. There's where it's all from like Creed's perspective, and that one shot of them walking the ring, and it's like over the shoulder. It's so cool looking. I'm like, that's
Creed.
I really liked
Creed is. I regret not watching it sooner, because I skipped it I don't remember why. I think I just didn't get around to it, and then I watched it and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing.
I have friends who were like, yeah, not Rocky, not interested. It's not Rocky. Why do I care? But he's so involved in the story of that one and the second one that I'm like, I get why he's not in the third one. It doesn't need him, but it's definitely missing him.
Yeah, for sure.
Rocky Balboa, that one I love too, because it's like, I love how that one's shot like an HBO box. Having now watched a few HBO boxing matches, it's like, it looks like one.
It does. It absolutely
one.
does. And it's counterintuitive, because you would think it doesn't feel like a big fight, but it actually helps. It enhances it because it's less intimate. And you're right. You're absolutely right. It feels more like you're watching a fight. Kind of like, I'm very proud of this skill here that I have of bringing things around. Kind of like how the legendary Godzilla movies, because they get so in close to everything, it does ironically take away from the scale at times, as opposed to some of the wider shots from the older Godzilla films.
What I will say, Godzilla 2014, that one's directed by Gareth Edwards.
Oh, that one's phenomenal.
That one he did Rogue One, and he is so good at scale. To me, the fact that he left after the first one is an utter shame, because
that's true.
One of my favorite shots, I got certain favorite shots in Star Wars. And one of my favorite shots in Star Wars is in Rogue One when you see the AT-ATs from the ground and you just see how truly, utterly terrifying they are as a civilian. You're like, holy shit, these things are actually huge. I love that. He did another really good one called Trolls that was apparently quite good. But yeah, he's the only one who's really nailed. But the other ones, it's like in Kong versus Godzilla, you get to actually see them. And that's a big thing for me. It's like when you actually get to see them do stuff instead of like it cuts away as they're about to do something.
Yeah. Wasn't there a shot in the 2014 where I could be misremembering this, when they're diving out of the plane and they have the red, which cool shot, but don't they fall close to Godzilla at one point?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. So that's another great example of the sense of scale, which you're absolutely right. I kind of feel stupid saying it the way I said it because I completely forgot about the first one. Does a tremendous job, but
I mean, it's almost a completely different movie from
it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I had against Kong and Godzilla versus Kong is, which does kind of lead to my point of, at least for me, Kong's size, even though it doesn't actually vary, it seems to.
Yes. But to be fair, so does Godzilla's. Godzilla's size also does vary. He has varied over the years. There's a really good chart.
Well, I know, but I mean in the same movie.
Oh,
because there are points where Kong seems larger than he actually is, and then scenes not long after where he's significantly smaller than he seems like he should be.
I didn't pay attention to that, so I was just so flabbergasted that I was watching, having watched King Kong versus Godzilla. I was just so flabbergasted I was watching a big budget version of it, and I was surprised there wasn't any blackface in it.
Oh my god, I forgot about the I totally forgot about the blackface.
When me and my brother, we wrote okay. Full disclosure, I think maybe you were one of the people who were asking about failed YouTube content on one of my videos. We made, and I've since downloaded it and I'm contemplating reposting it. But we did are you familiar with the Nostalgia Critic?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So there was a period where he was auditioning people for his site, and me and my brother, we wrote a pilot. We created a pilot, three or four pilot episodes for a series that didn't really do anything. And it was called Justin and Jordan's Picks. And the idea was one of us would pick a bad movie or good movie, and we'd make the other one watch it. And then it was just a straight rip of the Nostalgia Critic. But the big thing we were so focused on was like the blackface. We were like, oh my God, this is horrendous. It's in retrospect, it's a little less bad because they're Japanese. So they at least look
is it though?
Kind of my brother says it literally the same thing when I made this point, but at least they look kind of native if you squint just a little bit.
Although, fair point. Obviously Japan doesn't have the same history of that kind of specific oppression.
No, they don't have the same level of ickiness for certain things that America does. It's really quite
funny. There's definitely a history of oppression, but it is, the target's different, shall we say.
Yeah, they have the thing about Japan and in relation to the Godzilla movies is it's so funny how they're very scared of outsiders. Like they're very scared of and that's the number one thing I noticed watching those movies is how scared of outsiders they are. They're like a lot of the Godzilla movies are about aliens invading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, no, and that again. I always say like media, film, and television is a gateway to culture, and there absolutely are, because a lot of people are shocked to learn that there are still, obviously it's not super common, but I know various people that have been to Japan and they'll tell you it's like, oh yeah, they're racist as shit in some places.
I've heard that. Yeah. They don't like foreigners.
It's not everywhere, but again, we're used to living in, the United States and Canada where if somebody's openly racist, like that's like, fuck you,
Yeah. You're like, no, you're not a good guy.
Whereas it's much more like for example, there are restaurants that will not serve foreigners, period.
I've heard that. Yeah.
And it's not a color thing though. It's literally like, you're not Japanese, so fuck off.
Pretty much. And then they will be a lot more warming to you if you speak Japanese. It's if you speak a little bit of Japanese, they really like that because it shows to them that you're making an effort.
Yeah, and I think that's universal, because like any time I've ever been to Mexico, especially even because now my Spanish is not bad, but before it was like, I used to make the joke that I was like a 3-year-old. Now I'm probably about a 7 or an 8-year-old when I speak Spanish.
Yeah.
But even just a greeting, and then it's like, oh, I don't speak Spanish. It's still like it starts that bridge, and it's very appreciated
Yeah, I
from what
find
I can tell.
when I go to Mexico, I get oh, he's trying.
I get a little bit more than an awe he's trying. It's more like a, oh, he's trying. That's fantastic, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I guess going there as traveling as an American and then traveling as a Canadian are two entirely separate
Well, and
experiences.
it may have something to do with where you go, because if you go to a place that's a little bit more touristy, where a lot of people probably do speak English, you might get
Yeah.
more of that. Where I went, I was fortunate enough to go, I jokingly call it real Mexico.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the only white fucker there.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
of those. And I love telling this story too, because we were out in the mountains, like rural, like no,
Spanish.
yeah, like very much rural mountainous Mexico, like no indoor plumbing Mexico,
Oh
kind
wow.
of,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there was this kid that asked me if I could fix her bike. It was a relative of the people I was there with, and I didn't understand. I understood bicicleta, but that was it, you know. And I was just like, I'm like, help. They had to explain to her, because she was fairly young. They
Yeah.
had to explain to her that I don't understand what she's saying because I don't speak their language, but she's so young, she doesn't get that. You might as well have told her that I couldn't talk. And she just looked at me like I was so stupid.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I had a similar experience. We were at a grocery store there, like a convenience store, and it was like, yeah, I don't speak Spanish, and it was like, yeah, this is uncomfortable feeling.
I hate that feeling, though, by the way, which is why I'm so glad my Spanish has progressed quite a bit, because like I said, my girlfriend doesn't speak a lot of English. So it's
She speaks Spanish. Is that?
yes. Yeah.
Oh, so you're practicing it in the home?
Yes, but I was practicing beforehand, so it was pure.
Okay.
It was pure coincidence. I was learning Spanish for years, and then she and I met, and I was like, "Oh, well, I guess
Convenient.
here's a test," you know. Oh
Yeah.
God, I make the joke. I cannot believe we're still together, because I fucked our first date up so bad. Like,
Oh no.
well, I thought I spoke more Spanish than I actually did.
Right.
And then it was a weird phenomenon, because she is so much prettier in person than she is in her pictures, and I was not prepared for that. Because
Oh.
it's usually the opposite. Like, they're not ugly, but usually the pictures are like better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was expecting a pretty girl, but then what I saw was like so much prettier than the photos, and I was like, so I was a nervous wreck, and I didn't speak enough Spanish sufficiently to begin with, and she had no English at the
Oh
time, so it
no.
was like, I even said, I was like, I apologized. I was like, this was a disaster. And then she kept saying, no, no, it's fine. And I'm like, well, okay, put your money where your mouth is. Let's go on a second date. And then it got better
Oh.
from there.
Oh, good. But yeah, it's nice to when learning a language to have a person like that's what me and my brother were talking about the other day. We're like, it's so much harder.
It's
to know.
essential. It's
Yeah,
essential. You have to have, and it has to be a native speaker, I find.
Yes,
That's
absolutely, yeah.
fantastic. Now, if it's a native speaker that also speaks English, that's
That's even better.
very helpful. But thankfully, translators are free now.
Yeah. We were playing around with Google Translate the other day, and I was speaking Japanese to it, and even with my thick Canadian accent, it understood me. I'm like, excellent. I know enough to travel there now.
I mean, really, it's Google Translate's phenomenal, by the way.
It really is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
best
there.
friend.
It's very rare that there's a turn of phrase that it doesn't translate well, and it's not usually touristy things.
No, and usually if you're going there, you're going to the tourist areas, and most of them speak enough English that you can get by. But I learned how to say "Where is the hotel?" That was the number one thing.
Oh, I don't remember what where is.
Where is? Oh my God, you're taxing me. You're putting me on the spot. It is Coco. Coco is where? No, that's not it. I don't remember. Shit.
I know. Kore is this. What Koko?
This. I know Deska is a question.
Yeah.
There's been a few times when I was watching these Japanese movies where it's like the subtitles aren't asking a question.
So
and they're very much asking questions.
technically, ka is a question. Des ka is it or is
it?
something? Yeah.
Is something, yeah. Yeah, there's one time where it was
Languages
like,
are fun, man. I love learning, like, because I have a little Japanese. I can't read for shit, but
yeah.
I have a little Japanese, and enough to know when subtitles aren't always saying what
I tried taking it in high school, and then I got I hit a point where I got I fell back into because obviously this began with my love of Power Rangers, and I discovered I don't know how familiar you are with the Sentai, but there's a season called Go Kaiger, which you may recognize in America as Super Mega Force.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I I saw the big Japanese version of the big super fight, which is way better, by the way. Um, and that got me into the Japanese version of Power Rangers Sentai, and then that was just this sort of like. So I started watching crazy amounts of stuff in Japanese, and it's amazing how much that like absorbs into your subconscious. So then now I'm trying to actually actively learn. It's like holy shit, I know so many more words than I realized.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I find it funny when I like I'll pick up a word and then I realize how lacking I was by not knowing that word because it comes up so often.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. There's been a few times like, hey, I know that word.
So my favorite example of that was when I heard the Spanish word creer, so creo, or crees, you know, it because I'd been using pensar, which isn't. So creer is, it's not really a direct translation to English because, so pensar is to think, but creer is more like to think in the sense of like I believe.
Oh, okay.
But I'm like a fucking idiot because at the time I have an employee that speaks Spanish and not very much English, so I'm using pensar with him all the time, and then he starts using creer with me, and I'm like, wait, what is this word? And then he's trying to translate it, but I'm like, no, it's not to think because that's pensar. He's like, no, it's not, you know, blah blah blah. And then he finally is able to explain it to me. I'm like, oh, so I've been sounding like a freaking idiot for 3 months. He was like, no, I understand. I'm like, I know you understood me, but it's literally like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm speaking. Yeah, it's weird. I was saying to my friends, I'm like JSL in Japanese. Like that's what I feel like. But yeah, I watched a thing where it was like you have to approach language learning as if you were like a 3-year-old, and that
you do.
perspective is like, yeah, I'm watching children's television, and it's all for the purpose of learning. Well, children's television and television for middle-aged women. Weirdly enough, Kamen Rider is a big amongst middle-aged Japanese women.
Japan's a weird place.
Yeah, well, that it makes it extra. It makes it extra enjoyable because the Kamen Rider shows in particular are extra drippingly melodramatic, and like they're killing off characters. Like there's moments where characters are like scream crying about the most melodramatic. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
everything I love about that genre
Well,
of
and you know what?
television.
You know what's funny? You mentioned earlier that one of the things that makes specifically Japanese Godzilla so good is how seriously they take it, and that's also
Mhm.
true in Japanese pro wrestling.
Yes, they
It's
take it more
it's
seriously than we do.
way more. Well, I mean, that's
Yeah,
not even a fair comparison nowadays, but it's like it's the strangest thing to explain to someone who doesn't understand what I mean, which I assume you do because of your reaction.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
it's effectively the same thing, and the fans in Japan know it's bullshit,
yeah, yeah.
but there's respect for the narrative and the performance that
Absolutely.
they know it's bullshit, but they react as though it's real.
Well, I mean, it has everything to do with are you familiar with Kinnikuman
Yes,
at all? Yes, Kinnikuman was a massively popular franchise in Japan, huge. I know it, and everyone
as
else may know it
Ultimate
as
Muscle,
Ultimate Muscle. Yeah,
which I
and I
loved, man. Ultimate
uh
Muscle is such a guilty pleasure of mine.
I love it's not that that is a very specific example of the Japanese version is much better because it's 1,000 times dirtier. I
Oh
read the
yeah, yeah.
manga. I read the manga, and there's this bit where it's the Chojin Olympics, and he has to like it's like a tower thing, and he has to take him out with his erection, and it's like that didn't happen in the 4 Kids version, and
No, no, it did not.
it's great. It's great. It was very funny.
It's
But yeah, that's an incredibly popular franchise. Supposedly that's another one they're rebooting. They're doing a Kinnikuman reboot.
please.
And it's gonna get coming out. Which is like, yes, I you can't find it. It's so hard to find the original Kinnikuman. I've never
You
been able to find it.
Oh, the original's damn near impossible. The only way you can watch Ultimate Muscle, the Kinnikuman Nisei, is you have to buy, at least here, you have to buy the Blu-ray collection because it's not streaming anywhere. It's not.
No,
I mean, I guess you can pirate it, but it's even hard to find like online.
I had you can find the occasional episode of Ultimate Muscle,
Yeah.
on YouTube, but like one or two at most. At one point, they had the whole series on there because I rewatched it once. But yeah, no, it's not. It's not anywhere, which is a shame because I've always wanted to watch Kinnikuman. Like that's one of those series I've always wanted to. Like I'm gonna. It's old, but I want to subject myself to it because it looks good. I hear it gets really good. It's one of those like it starts off really silly and then it gets really really dark as it goes on. I've always
Well, Ultimate Muscle kind of did that.
yeah, Ultimate Muscle is so good.
It really is. The end arc is like we went from people turning into shoes and stepping in shit to this the final fight with Kevin Mask and
Kevin
Kid.
Mask is really good. I mean, there's some good stuff. I mean, I'm a big fan. I love Checkmate.
Yeah,
It's really fun. There's so many fun characters, and it's fun, really funny when you watch that show. I got really into for a while there. I got really into this show, Dark Side of the Ring, Vice's Dark Side of the Ring. So I got really into not even just watching pro wrestling, but the behind the scenes stuff and the I hate for lack of mechanics of pro wrestling and like what involves like what's involved in and all that. And so it's like when you watch Ultimate Muscle and you're like, they'd never be able to do these moves in an actual.
Oh no. Well, except fun fact for all you wrestling nerds out there, Samoa Joe, I don't think he uses it anymore, but his finishing move for a long time was the Muscle Buster, and he took it from Ultimate Muscle.
No kidding. I know that they, at one point
he altered it because if you actually did the move, you would kill someone. But how he got someone in the move and then he just does a backdrop instead of clenching down. But yeah, and he calls it the Muscle Buster. He took that. He flat out took it from Ultimate Muscle, and he says as much.
That's amazing. I know that for a while there in Japan, they had Mentaro, Kid Muscle. They had someone dressed as him take a run, and like he did a version of the muscle. But it might have
Muscle Buster.
Yeah, either that or not Muscle Millennium. I don't think they did a version of Muscle Millennium, but yeah, they did a version of the Muscle, which is like. Yeah, that would be so hard. Like just the amount of weight you'd have to support. Not only would you break your own neck, you break their neck.
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd be a double. And then of course there's Tiger Mask. Because Japan also does this one. Yeah, Japan does this wonderful thing. Oh well, they did it with Jushin Thunder Liger. It started as an anime and then became a legendary actual in-ring competitor.
Yeah.
And then
he's a very famous wrestler.
Yeah, oh yeah, and so yeah, Japan, I just as a culture and how they relate to media, nobody does it quite the same way because I don't think you could do that here. Like let's say I'm trying to think of a good let's say you had actually WWF way back in the day they tried to do it with Ninja Turtles. I believe they tried to do it with Power Rangers.
Did they?
I can't remember, but I know they tried to do it with Turtles.
Well, I know that there's a period during the WWF where they became very character focused, and there was a lot of big, stupid costume characters. So yeah, and America just has a hard time taking that seriously. It's surprising Rey Mysterio is as popular as he is.
Well, that's just because he was that damn good, And I make this point because we do a pro wrestling podcast on the network too called Down the Middle, and I've made the point several times. I'm like, listen, Rey Mysterio. Like everybody talks about, Rey Mysterio did. I'm like, Rey Mysterio is a 1 in a million person where you can actually believe somebody that's 5'6", and it's because he's that damn good.
Interesting. Okay, here's a question for you since you've got a podcast. I've been dying to ask an actual pro wrestling person this. How do you feel about Logan Paul? Just real quick, let me just say what I feel as an outsider watching it. I feel he looks good. Like he's doing stuff that's genuinely impressive. That's like that frog, not the frog, the one where he collided midair with Ricochet. I got into a huge fight with someone on TikTok over that because I was like, that shit's impressive. Like
that's
to me,
very impressive. And you got to think, like, let's take a look at Ricochet for a moment. This is a guy who's been a freak athlete since he was little. He has literally spent his entire life training his body to do these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Logan Paul is a freak of nature.
Totally, yeah.
Now let's be real. He doesn't do it as good as Ricochet, but that's like saying you can't run as fast as Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
It's Logan Paul's a freak. And
it sure seems that way.
When he first came, I went, "Oh God," because we've seen this before, right?
Yeah.
But then I watched his first match, and it didn't take till the end. It was very early on. I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, well, that's why it's when I see him doing stuff. I saw some stuff from he did that one frog splash, or was it no, he did the jump off of the turnbuckle where he was doing it in selfie mode the whole time. And I was like, the amount of coordination he's got to do there is that's why I always say I start to take umbrage with the fact when people are like wrestling's fake, because it's like you don't fake that shit, man. Like you can't fake that.
Well, as JR used to say, you can't fake gravity, kid.
Yeah, or I mean, the one, if anyone ever is like wrestling is fake, the one clip I always go to is Undertaker throwing Mankind off of that cage.
Well, and then
you want to call that fake? He really died.
Well, and then I always point out Owen Hart, who did die.
Hart, yeah, he did die. Yeah.
Or I mean, there's so many injuries you can point to. Like, it's not fake.
I always bother. There's an element of scriptedness to it, but they're putting their bodies on the line in a way that I would never do or couldn't do anyway.
Massive respect, which is why because having not been, my co-host is a trained wrestler, but I am not. So whenever I'm criticizing pro wrestling, it's usually like the narrative criticisms of like, this storyline sucks. And it's a shame because the two people that are involved in it are very good and they deserve better than this, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, Logan Paul is phenomenal. And Logan Paul also, like, he's impressive physically. His in-ring psychology for someone who has never done this before is now Logan Paul he knows how to manipulate a crowd. So he has that going for him.
Absolutely.
And then very recently he saved Rey Mysterio from, I
saw that,
possibly dying, but at very least getting very, very injured.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that I didn't see exactly what he did, but a lot of people were like, Logan Paul. That's why when he went back to boxing, I was like, dude, stay where you're good. I understand from an ego perspective, you wanted to have a win, but
and he's not a bad boxer either.
No, well, okay. You want to talk guilty pleasures real quick? Influencer boxing is absolutely my guilty pleasure. I'm so into influencer boxing. I'm so I was all in on the KSI Tommy Fury thing. I made a series of videos and where I criticized KSI, and I had a bunch of his fans just come at me.
Well, he should be. But speaking of Tommy Fury, did you see the fight with Ngannou?
Yeah, I saw clips and
bro.
Depending on who you are, some people are really mad.
Oh, Ngannou won.
Oh, okay. So who actually won?
Tommy Fury won by decision.
He won by decision. Okay. So here's my thing about that. Okay. And yeah, sure. Judges rigged, whatever. Here's my thing about that ultimately. Dana White said this and he's right. Never leave it to the judges. Like if he, who was it? True Geordie, I think is what his name is. He said this is if you're not knocking out, if he's a non-boxer and you're not knocking him out, it's destroying your whole legacy. Like you've just destroyed like Tommy Fury. Go back to Tommy Fury. He could barely beat a YouTuber who is, as far as I'm concerned, not a very good boxer.
And Tommy Fury's
the Fury legacy.
Yeah. Well, but here's the thing: Tommy Fury's no joke.
No, he's not.
Yeah, like that's what I feel like people who are saying that Francis Ngannou won. Sometimes they're saying it in a way that's like taking away from Fury, and I'm like, no, that's how amazing Ngannou did.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ngannou hits like a truck.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, he's like a ton of bricks. That guy. So
that's like watching Brock Lesnar's early UFC career.
I love those fights. My favorite UFC fight of all time. I quote it constantly, in my day-to-day life. You want to talk Roman Empire? Is that fight between Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir? Where he gets him up in the cage, he just hits him in the face, and he gets up and he's like, Frank Mir has had a horseshoe up his ass for the past year, so I ripped it out and I beat him over the head with it. It's so the man knows how to cut a promo. Okay.
Well, yeah.
He wasn't cutting a promo; he was cutting a goddamn promo. It was so good.
Well, that's what I say. There are many sports, practically all sports, that could benefit from taking a page out of pro wrestling's book, because it's not the matchup, it's the personalities that make the fight.
I agree.
And
I don't think modern UFC, it lacks that. It lacks the personalities. There isn't anyone who's like
there's a hit.
Liddell.
Yeah, no, not like it used to be. And that's why I think Logan Paul and people like him can be very beneficial, because he has at least a sense of legitimacy, but he knows how to work a crowd.
Yeah, yeah. Say what you will about him, Jake Paul, KSI. They're doing, in my opinion, professional wrestling works, and they're working. Like
They
they're
are,
working really well.
for
And yeah,
sure.
they know how to wreck up a cloud. I mean, look,
Well, I always say this about when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather, and
that was a good fight too.
but they're trading jabs, blah blah blah. I'm like, those two dudes were shaking hands and hugging backstage and be like, did you see, we're milking these suckers?
Oh, for sure. That fight was funny because that was very much a case of like Conor McGregor is very much a UFC fighter and he's got his guard down. And yeah, it's kind of a wonder. I mean, also, my favorite fight is the Logan Paul. Speaking of Logan Paul, the Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight. That was one of the greatest examples of a man getting knocked out and getting carried for 6 rounds. Like that was, you could see it. You could see it. That's why when Jake Paul was like Logan Paul won, I was like, what are you talking about? You can literally watch it on the camera.
No,
You could see Logan Paul
sorry.
go unconscious and then wake up again. And then as he's on, his chin is on Mayweather. There's a moment you
Yeah.
can see it in Mayweather's eyes where he's like, shit, he's not a very good fighter. I can seriously hurt him. I need to take it 1,000% easier.
Which actually, I didn't, when I first became aware of Floyd Mayweather, I did not like him at all. But now, I mean, it's been several years, by the way, but I at least, I respect the hell out of him, and I really respected him after that fight.
Yeah,
because it would have been very easy for him to just knock Logan Paul out.
For sure. Yeah, it would have been. He could have. I think, again, you can kind of see it when he's doing it. You can see the moment where he realizes he could if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think he said, he's like, I needed to make this an entry. But to be fair, when he went to fight Deji, KSI's brother, it was an embarrassment. He didn't take it remotely seriously. It didn't look good. It didn't look good. Like, I believe there's a such thing as an embarrassing loss or embarrassing victory, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
So when KSI beat Panetti, that was an embarrassing victory. I made a video about that where I was like, he should be embarrassed. That's an embarrassing victory because the guy didn't put up a fight. How can you call it a fight when your opponent doesn't put up a fight?
I mean, kind of like Godzilla versus Hedorah.
Oh yeah. I was in the middle of that last night actually when I haven't finished it yet. But yeah, that one, yeah, it is. Yeah, Hedorah, that one's not good.
That's like Godzilla. You're really celebrating beating up a giant lobster.
That one predates a lot of environmental, the 80s environmental panic. It's kind of funny. It kind of is ahead of its time in that regard. Because it's like, this is pre-Captain Planet and he's fighting a smog monster. Like that.
That's true.
Yeah, they really hadn't really zoned in on that quite yet in terms of a thing to be aware of. So the Japanese were ahead of their time, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, my friend, we have been going for a little over 2 hours and it has been a blast, but I do kind of want to wrap it up so that people don't get bored. Yeah. If they want to have, if you guys want to have Justin back on, actually just keep pressuring him to start his own podcast because that would be entertaining as shit.
Here's what I'll say. I will do a podcast, but I need a co-host.
I don't have time to do another one.
I can find a co-host, but here's what I'll say. Whatever people want to hear me talk about, I don't have any specific ideas for a podcast. I like talking about stuff from Japan. I got lots of stuff I can talk about there. So if people want to hear me talk more about that, I will.
I might have somebody who would be into that with you.
Cool.
We can connect. Are you into horror by chance?
Oh heck yeah! I did a big watch through last year of all the Friday the 13th.
Okay, I know. I got somebody. I'll message him and link you guys up on Instagram. At the very least, you'll have fun because he's a big. I'm trying to get him to start a podcast too, so we might be able to.
I'd like to come back. I'd like to come back with you, and I'd like to discuss the 80s, 90s, and 2000s a bit more thoroughly because I haven't seen them yet. I kind of feel like we could do a part 2 to this.
We absolutely could. Well, we tell you what, when Godzilla X Kong is getting ready to come out, we'll revisit Godzilla.
In the meantime, I am going to continue. If people can follow me, if I can plug my stuff.
At the very end, I was going to let you, but go for it.
Okay, well, you can follow me at Justin Spurr on TikTok. If you like the Godzilla stuff, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep talking about Godzilla. I've learned to try to create a series never works. So it's just a random Godzilla marathon. Please come comment, come join, come input what you have. And yeah, we have fun. We talk about all kinds. Yeah. I try to keep it varied on my page. I can try to talk about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And it's all linked together. So I find that it's actually easier to not constrain yourself to one topic. because
exactly.
it could you as you saw, we very easily transfer. But in closing, I do want to, and I know that's an impossible question. Out of all the ones you've seen thus far,
Yes.
what would you say your favorite Godzilla movie is?
Ooh.
I know it's an unfair question, and I'm going to answer it, but I have a feeling my answer will change after I
Here,
see.
here's the thing. Okay, my favorite or the best? Let me clarify.
Let's both. Let's do
Both?
both.
Okay, thus far, the best is the original. Um, that's the best one. My favorite might be Ghidorah, King of the Monster, King Ghidorah, because the first one, because
That's
that
good.
that one is really that is like the Avengers of that era, and that's when you're getting the peak monster fights. Like that's they're bashing it. Yeah, it might be that. But ask me in a week, my opinion will probably change.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Both my favorite, and I think my favorite is the original Japanese, and I think it's the best. Although I think Shin Godzilla might be a close second, and you can make a case for a first. It's not one that I agree with, but I think you can make a case for it.
Yeah.
I think my opinion on both of those will change once I see Godzilla -1.
Yeah, I have a good feeling that one's gonna change my mind about a lot of things. I'm so excited for that.
It's very, very rare because what I will do a lot of times is, and it's not on purpose, I will just have so high, my expectations for a movie will be so high that it can't possibly meet it, but just occasionally it actually exceeds my overhyped expectations. And that is
Very rarely.
it is so awesome when that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I love kind of the opposite. I love going into a thing and having no expectations and having them completely blown out. But I have high expectations for -1. I do.
See that
Looks so
happened.
good.
That happened to me with Morbius. I had zero expectations. It wasn't a stellar movie, but I mean, it wasn't that bad.
That's one of those ones I like it because it's bad.
Like, don't get me wrong, it's not a cinematic masterpiece, but
No.
we did a review of it, and honestly, I think we did a good job of sticking up for it because it's like, listen, is it perfect? No, but you guys, I think the mistake people made with Morbius is they went in wanting a superhero movie, and it's like, no, this is a vampire movie.
I went into it expecting it to be about the quality of the Tom Hardy Venom movies. I love those movies, but they're also bad.
This is true, particularly Let There Be Carnage. We were actually disappointed with Let There
I
Be Carnage.
I have my thoughts on that. I like it. That's one of those I like it because it's bad, but there's parts of it I don't like. It's
The part that we love though is when when Venom retreats and he was like, "That's a red one."
yeah.
We love that.
He's got a lot of great lines in that movie.
Yeah, I mean Venom is good. Venom is very
But yeah,
entertaining.
I love something that's dumb and silly, and that's what I love about the Godzilla movies.
I do love and hate the fact that Venom is sick of Eddie's shit, so he leaves, but he doesn't have compatible hosts, so he's
Yeah.
literally killing people. You just
I
don't
love that.
realize it because they're playing it for laughs.
My favorite scene is where he's at the rave and he's like, I am free and unencumbered. And yeah, if you look at it like they're in a relationship and this is their like he's on a break moment.
I know, and that's why it's hilarious. Which is funny. We'll touch on this and then wrap it up, I guess. But
Yeah.
they actually messed up their continuity because Venom in the first one, he doesn't have to have a compatible host necessarily.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then that was
that
was my big pet peeve with the second one. I was like, oh, so now Venom can't latch on to just anybody. I get it.
Yeah. My favorite part about Venom 2 is a meta external thing where I love the post credit scene in that movie, and I love how when it seemed to set up he was going to be in Homecoming, and then he wasn't. And that was funny because every person, when it got to the end of Homecoming and it shows him going back, there's at least 5 people in my theater who were pissed off, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen. They were so angry. They're like, "What?"
I do believe they're still setting up for something because Spider-Man is one of the few Marvel properties that hasn't been completely fucked yet.
Yeah. I think. Well, they've said it's going to happen, quote, sooner than we think.
Well, I just saw they dropped the trailer for Madam Web.
Oh, don't get me. We're wrapping up, man. You don't get me started. Don't get me started. I'll rant for the rest of the night about that trailer.
It looks awful.
Horrendous. It looks horrendous.
First of all, you cast Dakota Johnson in a superhero movie. What the fuck were you thinking?
What is that costume that the guy's wearing? It's like, oh my, it's like we're doing Terminator badly, and it's Spider-Man. All right. All right.
Spider
Okay.
Spider-Man 2. Oh my god.
T S2. I don't know. Judgment Day. Anyway. Yeah, it looks bad.
Madam Web Judgment Day.
Judgment Day. It looks bad. It looks very bad.
Yeah, it looks see, this is where Marvel should take a page out of Toho's book and just let it go for a minute.
Well, yeah. I mean, that would make it well, I mean, to be fair, I thought Endgame should have been the series finale and then they should have restarted from there. But look, whatever they're doing in the future, do a proper series finale. Bring back as many people as you can. Bring back your Robert Downey Jr. Bring back your whoever, Thor, whoever, and do a big send off to the whole thing, and then call it a day.
Yep, I agree. At least for a while, because Godzilla has shown us you can always bring it back.
Yeah. A franchise can last. I mean, the Super Sentai, Doctor Who. I mean,
Yeah, Doctor Who. Yep.
60 years, and they took a big old break in the center there.
Yeah, they did. They sure did. Well, and then there were times where Toho was literally like, "Nope, Godzilla's dead," and then they're like, "Well, we like money, so."
Yeah, well, the Final Wars was supposed to be the finale. I mean, that's why it's called Final Wars. It's
there's
to be the finale of
there's
Godzilla.
there's been a couple of the finales, yeah.
Yeah,
But
and then they did the. That's why they sold it to Legendary in the first place, was because
yeah.
um
Well, then they did.
they were going to take the reins on it.
Yeah, well, Destroy All Monsters was supposed to be the first finale. After, of course, the first movie was supposed to be a one-off.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the big finale. You're right.
And then they were like, "Well, no, people like this shit too much, so just kidding." And then there was another one before that. Maybe it was Destroy. No, I can't remember. But yeah, you're right. Final Wars was supposed to be it.
Godzilla's pretty good about keeping up with each of the eras, so they usually stick within. So there's the Showa era, the Heisei era, and now they're on the Reiwa. I'm really
Reiwa, I believe. Yeah,
Reiwa era. Yeah, and they've always stuck pretty tightly. Like once the era ends, they stop until the new era starts. It's always been that way.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been Godzilla versus Destroy. Yes, it was Godzilla versus Destroya. That was the precursor because again they sold it to Columbia. They sold the rights to Columbia when they made that abomination.
Yeah. And then that was supposed to be it for Toho.
And then it was so horrendously bad. They were like, we can't end on that.
Yeah, and that's what led to the Millennium Era. That's where the Millennium Era happened, and then Final Wars was the end of the Millennium Era, and then they made the 2014 one, and then they were like, "Oh man!" And they it was different. Like, we got the itch to do a Godzilla.
And then they made Shin. What year did Shin Godzilla come out? Was that 2016?
That was 2016.
Yeah, and I think that was basically. I like to think that was just a giant experiment where it's like, yeah, we'll make some money, but we're also going to see if there's a taste for that old Godzilla, and god damn, there was.
Also a more realistic take on it, because in Japan, Godzilla had been known as a kind of a sillier thing. So I was like, can we do a more grounded, and that's kind of the whole pitch for the Shin series generally, is it's all meant to be more grounded and realistic.
Yeah, but I love, like I said at the beginning, I'll say it again, I love the fact that with Godzilla -1, they're going back not just to the roots. I mean, they're literally going back to the beginning, and they're basically retelling. And I know it's an adaptation. I don't want to call it a remake because it's not. It's going to be much grander in scale. Mm-hmm. But God, it looks. I love the fact that the trailer doesn't give details away either, because I have no idea what the plot. I don't know if it's just going to rip off, and I'm fine with it if they just rip the plot from the first one. I don't think they will.
The 2014. No, I guess it didn't really, but it's a good plot. It works. It's fine. It's functional. It's.
Well, yeah, and it takes it does very much what Godzilla does, which takes whatever is in the consciousness, because Fukushima happened only a few years prior,
exactly,
and that's the what do you call that? I completely forgot what you call that. The event that sets everything in motion.
Oh, the inciting incident.
Yes, that's my brain doesn't work, but yeah, that's the inciting incident, is a nuclear reactor failing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that's so interesting about Godzilla is, but at the end of the first one that I thought was so interesting was how they were effectively like, hey, let's not do this again. Let's not do another nuclear thing, because maybe we'll create another Godzilla. And then the second one's like, you know what's worse than one Godzilla? Two Godzillas. So yeah, just the idea that they were very much like, hey, here's the lesson here. and then we as we as a society could be argued didn't learn it.
Well, and one of the things that, again, that I appreciate about the Japanese storytelling, at least in the Godzilla franchise, is that I don't think you would get in an American version, because we're very different culturally in this aspect.
Mhm.
The Japanese writers treat Godzilla as something where you can't destroy it with a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And unless you're willing to risk everything, it's something that to a certain extent you're just going to kind of have to live with and prepare as best you can.
And it's so funny because culturally people are like, oh, Japan's just ready for giant monster attacks on a moment's notice, but it's like, well, yeah, you would be. You would be.
I mean, yeah. Well, it makes sense as a part of a cultural identity. Although I forget which comic said it, but caught after when Fukushima was happening, and then it came out that they were pumping seawater into the reactor to cool it, and then they were just dumping it back into the ocean. I forget the comic. I wish I could remember what he was like. Have you guys seen your own monster movies? He's like,
yeah,
that's how it happened.
pretty much. Yeah, that is. Yeah, they were like, yeah, we tried to test a bomb and we created a Godzilla. And then the end of the movie's like, let's not make another one.
Although I guess, to be fair, I've heard Elon Musk talk about this. I guess shortly after that, to help calm fears about radiation, he actually went to Fukushima and ate fish from the area.
Wow, brave.
Well, I think I get the sense that it's not quite what people think it is. And then there's also some really, really interesting, because I didn't know this until recently, and somebody randomly asked me, they're like, well, hang on. So like, we know about Chernobyl, and that's only just now fairly recently starting to be where you can even go there. And they're like, but Hiroshima and Nagasaki were repopulated like not long after.
Yeah.
And they're like, why is that? And then I actually found out why. It was because of where the bomb actually detonated. It never actually touched the ground. And even, I guess, and I'm so not a nuclear physicist, but I guess even being somewhat away from the ground has a massive impact on how the radiation gets distributed. Most of it went up.
Interesting.
Whereas with Chernobyl, I didn't either. But that makes total sense, because then you have something like Chernobyl, which took place at ground level.
That makes sense. And then, the radioactive half-life is much longer.
Much longer. Even with, I forget what the distance they actually said, but it's relatively short. Only a few kilometers makes a big difference.
Interesting.
Or not even kilometers, I think meters. Like only a few meters makes, But yeah, that's what happens when you're a nerd and you watch something and then you have questions because you can't leave it alone. You're like, I must learn.
Well, I mean, my next step after this, I'm gonna watch Oppenheimer. That's been sitting on my shelf. I've been watching Godzilla movies, waiting for Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I still haven't watched Oppenheimer, and I need to.
Yeah, it's on my list. I still haven't seen his last one still, which is totally escaping me.
What was his last one?
The one that was really hard to understand.
Because I didn't. What, Inception?
Not Inception.
I was gonna say that's older.
The one that was about time travel. Not Interstellar, but the one after that.
I don't know which one you're talking about.
Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can quickly do this. Hold on.
So what if this is the only way I think they can screw up Godzilla -1 is if it is time travel?
Well, I had a rumor that at the end, it was going to turn out that the Godzilla that was attacking was an evil Godzilla, and that a good Godzilla was going to show up. And I hate that so much.
I was going to say, I'll be honest, if that happens, I will be extremely disappointed because
I know.
Well, why would you do that after the success of Shin Godzilla? You know there's an appetite for it, right?
Tenet. Yes.
Oh,
exactly,
Tenet.
right? Tenet. I haven't seen Tenet because I heard it was not very good.
I've heard the vast majority of what I've heard is that it's not good, but I've heard some people say it was actually worth seeing, so I don't know.
The thing that dissuaded me from watching in the theaters was everyone was like, you can't understand what anyone's saying because everyone's face is masked. And I was like, well, I'll just wait for it. I'll wait till I can have subtitles when it's at home.
Fair. Alrighty, sir. Well, before we start boring everyone, but if you want more Godzilla comments, just leave. If you want more Godzilla, leave it in the comments. And then absolutely feel free. I can send you a link to this episode once it actually downloads and processes if you want to chop it up Yeah,
I absolutely do.
I figured you would. Just remember to tag us.
Yes, of course. And then I still need to get you a thumbnail.
Oh, yes, yes, I need your photo because
Yes,
actually, if you look at the thumbnail, there is an image not found where you are going to be.
that's funny. Yeah, I'll snag one as soon as we're done here.
Cool, very good. Well, once again, you can find our guest here on TikTok and hopefully YouTube soon,
Yes,
and
yes.
hopefully on artemedia.org. I've got to message my buddy Nick. I'm not sure that if he's awake right now. He should be, but I'll message him and then get you guys connected. And if you want to make something happen, we're here to support you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, hey, I would be happy to join your network.
Okay, well, basically, we'll find you a co-host. We'll make it happen if that's my buddy
Yeah.
Nick. Great, because he's a big Sentai fan too. So I feel you guys you're basically like the Canadian version of him, and and he's the
Excellent.
American version of you. So
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, by the way.
Oh,
This
thanks
was
for
awesome.
coming on.
I had so much fun.
Thanks for coming on. Well, that has been the Arete podcast. Don't forget to get your Thanksgiving candles from Stevie Wicks before they are gone. But then I guess if you don't get those, you'll have room for the Christmas ones. So, do with that what you will. But please like, share, and subscribe because we only grow because you help us. And if you prefer to listen to the podcast rather than watch it, you can check us out on basically all the audio streaming platforms, including but not limited to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Podcast Addict. I forget all of them all the time, but basically iHeartRadio, if they have podcasts on it, we're probably there. Or you can see all the podcasts on the network right in aretemedia.org. You can listen to them all there. The entirety back catalog of all the episodes are there for all the podcasts. So in one easy location, plus the blog and other stuff, and our pretty sure it will be next year, but the championship belt that we kind of pass around competitively for cross promotion will be making a return under a different name because we retired the first one because our dearly parted friend Ben was the last one to have it and we just couldn't take it away from him. So we retired that one. But we're going to be bringing a new one at the beginning of the year, hopefully very soon. So stay tuned for that. And we will see you guys on the next one and be sure to check out the other podcasts. And go see Godzilla -1.
Yes.